Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Wednesday, December 1st. Let's hop in. I so I've been sitting on this too much. This bug still seems to be around. For the accountability section, I've been just kind of trying to rest my eyes, and I've been trying to drink like Dayquil equivalents to to potentially think if maybe antihistamines or just a like clogged sinuses might be the problem. Um, for the past couple days, I have worked a little bit on the YouTube macro, and I'm gonna have to almost certainly script in a point where I'm gonna have to work with the macro as a human. Um, YouTube has just such a incredibly stupidly programmed non-standard way in which they have a simple input field of text that you'd see on any website where you type in your username, things like that. They are so incredibly far off of using just HTML to do that, and instead are using a entire layer upon layer of internal proprietary JavaScript coding, uh, it really to no avail. It's basically just to help like the few people that can mention somebody on YouTube. I don't even know if mentions are even allowed anymore on YouTube, and that's just legacy code on the new YouTube beta, which would be kind of ridiculous in itself, but I very well may be the case. And there is I guess maybe hashtags or something else that you could put in the title, that it's running all this JavaScript on top of that field to do. And frankly, you could have run all that JavaScript just fine if you had just not used incredibly crazy style sheets on top of it to use div elements in HTML instead of just using a input field. I don't want to get deep into HTML certainly, but I just cannot find a way to get this macro to be able to put the code in right, update the title, and then the JavaScript recognize that the title has been updated, which is crazy because it looks like it works, but then you browse away and then it goes back, which is probably the most annoying way you can ever deal with anything, is when you have code that does something and then a software that just undoes the thing you did when you're not looking. So I think instead of potentially trying to bang my head over it, I've tried a lot of different things. Theoretically, I've seen one forum post saying somebody trying to do the same thing with YouTube's website in particular, and they say if you paste it into the box, just send the Control V signal, that'll work. In my experience, no, it hasn't, so they may have changed something else since that post, or frankly, I'm on the forum for the macro software. I half suspect that what they do is they are actually just straight up lying in their forum, and they have forum moderators that go in and pretend to be the other person and congratulate the support people for helping. Which, yeah, it wouldn't be the first job where an employee had the ability to straight up make fake reviews or make fake thank you statements to make it look like they're really doing something. Normally in most jobs you'll see it the opposite direction though, where you'll have managers straight up make fake complaints up just because they want to fire people and get rid of people. So I'm down to the point of thinking, well, I may just have to straight up just let the program pause and take a sweet 2 minutes of just checking to see if it's been updated, checking to see if it's updated. There really isn't even a prompt thing in the macro. And honestly, I guess what I'm using is more of a program than a macro. It's a macro software. Nah, it's Turing complete. You can jump to different parts of the code and you can compare things. So it's a real program. It feels more like a macro because it's manipulating other software, i.e. Chrome, but it technically is a program on top of itself. Plus you can drop down to JavaScript to program even more complicated things, which you pretty much have to drop down to JavaScript to do specific things. So it will be really stupid because I can jump down to JavaScript, know exactly what it's supposed to say, and then I'll just have to have the program just sit there and not do anything and wait for me to still watch and look at the TV, look at the computer, and type in the time. So instead of it being a fully automated process where I could just like go to sleep and wake up and have everything scheduled and be 100% certain that they did everything right, I'll have to watch it, but it will be an accelerated experience. But whatever, at a certain point, if it's accelerated enough, like 1 day's worth of work may schedule everything, may schedule literally months of recording. I also realized that the way I had it programmed was picking the first video on the list of videos, not the last video, which actually is way easier to do in retrospect. So I simply changed the code to make sure that the web page was sorted in a different way. So instead of descending, it's ascending now. And since that is just mentioned in the URL of the web pages, all I have to do is just make sure it says ascending for the sort by date option, and it's not sorted some other way. What's also kind of crazy about the YouTube website, which I'm sure nobody cares about this, but I'm just going to say it too, is that there are actually two different ways in which you get into manipulating a video, depending on whether or not it's a draft or it's a already scheduled video that's just private. So like it looks different, but it doesn't matter because the title field, and it's literally just the title field that's going to give me trouble, I think. If not just the title field, it'll be the title field and the date field. But I think the date field actually does have an input box, whereas the title field just doesn't. And all could be really adjusted fairly easily if the programming simply had an increment ability. Which you would have to then account for that, but you probably wouldn't have to account that much. So yeah, if it just by default incremented the number. And you know what, it's not, even though YouTube is pretty much useless to responding to things, maybe 6 months to a year from now they would actually listen and increment a number. And if they make that a feature, then that's a feature that they potentially would support in the future and not drop. Of course, we're talking about YouTube here, and so the odds of that are fairly low. But I probably should send some feedback and just say, Kate, could you please integrate this, increment this number, or have a checkbox? Because that would be... That would fix it easier, and it would remove one more thing that has potentially 5 or 6 lines of code. Like, I actually broke up the code into several different bits of code just to keep things nice and small. I'm approaching kind of the ridiculous level of coding where you have a function that literally is 1 or 2 lines, and you call that function only once or twice in your code, but you still do that just to keep everything separate and easier to understand. Whereas that's not actually a great way for readability if you're having to jump up and down all over the code sheets. But in the case of the macro software I'm using, which is called UI Vision, by the way, it's a terrible user interface. It doesn't even have a dark mode, and the colors they have right now, or they've even admitted, are just awful colors. So it literally is difficult to read the code, even when you have only like 12 lines of code. Anyways, so anything to help there. But yeah, as far as the accountability section, I basically done nothing. I could wrap up Black Friday and say I think I'm going to spend about $20 later today on the Steam sale just to get Binding of Isaac Afterbirth. And probably not Afterbirth Plus or anything like that, or Repentance, but just get the next bit of DLC on that and a couple other things that are really cheap. Overall, I bought extremely little this Black Friday, which is really more than acceptable because I had bought a fairly significant amount on Amazon Prime Day, and even at that level it is questionable if I hadn't really just gone a little too overboard on Black Friday. I mean Amazon Prime Day, as far as purchasing stuff. The irrigation project, for instance, while I have gotten it to work, and now we are on the path of I'm hoping that actually not only saves money, but invigorates a potentially dying yard. But then, but that was a project that really, it did work, but it didn't work as nicely as I would have liked it to, and certainly there's a better way to have done it. The Accents smoke detectors, the one that I purchased, I don't think I'd recommend them at this point. The Wi-Fi smoke detectors, they need desperately a second generation. There is something about a standard part of 802.11n at the 2.4 gigahertz range that they just are not programmed well to handle, and it has something to do with the WMM standard that is mandatory about that. My Wi-Fi in general has been a nightmare for nearly a year now, and I finally found a forum post that showed me some different settings, and I'm hoping I can just set all the settings and stop having this constant disconnect. I legitimately think there is a decent chance that someone is actively trying to run some kind of deauthorization attack or just some kind of thing as far as my Wi-Fi connection, because there are 2 hidden SSIDs that are actively changing to the same channel, whatever channel I go to, and they are always trying to overpower that channel on the 2.4 gigahertz processors. There's also, I think, just a lot of 2.4 gigahertz routers in my neighborhood, and it has just become incredibly flooded. And I think I've heard other people talk about this and not really realized just how bad it has been up until this point. I imagine this is something that a lot of other people have recognized, is that there's just no way to even get a good connection. But slow speeds would be acceptable. Completely losing connection is not, though, and that's what's been happening for over a year. There is one more hope, well, 2 more hopes. Either I will, with these new settings, find that the smoke detector actually works and doesn't disconnect, and it has a weird way in which it disconnects, in which it goes to standby mode, and it would be potentially several days later that it would finally recognize that it hasn't come out of that standby mode and reconnected to the servers in China, which that's a problem too, certainly, that everything is going through these Tuya servers in China to connect these devices to. So yeah, the other option is that I can make theoretically I can make a fake secondary Wi-Fi access point that specifically has WMM disabled, which would make for incredibly slow connections. But honestly, for a few devices, slow connections is really a relative element that doesn't matter. Like, a slow connection for a smoke detector that's only supposed to be sending out one small signal on an extreme rare case is fine, and it's going to be slow around 15 megabits per second, or megabytes per second. I think probably bits there. It's not going to be ridiculously slow or anything. It's just going to be potentially, I would say 6 times as slow as what a standard 802.11 connection can get for you. And honestly, if this works, it probably wouldn't be a terrible idea to try and throw some of the other devices on the slower connections also, and free up some bandwidth between my own internal Wi-Fi network. Things like my Ecobee thermostat, for instance, or the ratio irrigation controller,
Enemy identified.
or the Ream Wi-Fi controller. All of those are fairly small devices that don't need to be calling home or don't need a large bulk of data compared to, say, the Roku TVs that want to have a much higher bandwidth connection, so there's less loading and delay when you're loading video, which is way more noticeable. But that really would just be doing a kind of weird form of quality of service without actually enabling QoS, which I've given up on trying to enable and use QoS also.
100% string and 0% fluff.
This'll be
Spin
over
in a
quick.
twirl and out.
Okay.
There's our puppet again.
Shutting down.
I am such a
But
genius.
there is also a possibility, as I wrap up this wandering accountability section, that I actually can't run a virtual access point. There's also definitely a possibility that if I just had a standard Wi-Fi router,
The dead need a living wage.
I wouldn't be running into any of these problems. And it's the openness of DDWRT that let me change the settings in the first place to cause a problem.
There's a reason we're alive.
Or just that the driver support has kind of a consistent bug or something that enough people aren't complaining about.
Truth and lies.
Speaking of software, NextHub announced, Nextcloud announced
Oh, guinea pigs, where are
Nextcloud
you?
Hub 2, which is basically a conglomeration of Nextcloud properties.
I've got this under control.
Let's see.
I am such a genius. Such a good guinea pig.
And so that they are updated and tried to improve a lot of things as far as the
Everything was a lie.
as far as Nextcloud. And one of the things they've improved upon is that they are going to release a new Docker image called Nextcloud All-in-One, not to replace the several already existing Docker images.
Oh, my beloved mother.
But All-in-One is going to try to be a more simplistic way in which you can use Docker. Not even really set up so far. I mean, it's very beta at the moment, but not even set up to use Docker Compose. Just standard Docker to set up a Nextcloud instance without having to make as many decisions or choices. Try and automate things a little bit better, make it a little bit more robust and long lasting is my assumption there.
All of you.
Let's see. Do this.
Sleep.
So, yeah. If I ever find enough free time to get back to working on my
The truth will cut you down.
server, having a new Docker image for Nextcloud might be a little bit more helpful for a little bit more stability, because I was kind of running into a few stability issues. I've seen several new things that have come out to potentially try as different Docker images to see if I can get it to work. I don't know if I really would spend the next step to try and have it all in a Kubernetes setup and trying to learn Kubernetes. Honestly, it would be better just to keep myself a little bit more limited and just get the thing to actually work. It's kind of ridiculous to have a server that's not even plugged in at the moment and hasn't been for weeks. But yeah, I'm also waiting for Debian, to the most current stable version of Debian, to have ZFS version 2.1 released so that they can use the distributed DRAID format for a RAID array.
What goes around comes around.
And since that's not happened, it's kind of a convenient excuse to not do anything until that does happen. Okay.
Useless puppets get no love. What fine threads you have.
This one.
This'll be over quick.
This one.
Accept harmony.
Hit that one. That one.
Hostile life form detect terminating.
One.
Hostile life form. Heavy impact sustained.
2. 3.
Cave in?
Okay, I think I've won there. I will say, there's a lot more news that has come out between the past couple days versus over the weekend. And it does feel like some of that is a spring back and a catch up as far as the Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving, Black Friday event. So we're definitely not guaranteed that we'll do a fall list cleanup. I did take the effort to open up a bunch more tabs for games starting with the letter H.
Want to play?
But there's a decent chance we won't do that, and we'll just go through the news. And it still is probably a good idea to try and keep this stream fairly short because my eye does not feel great still. There was a talk of somebody fairly big, at least according to Reddit, going from Twitch to YouTube. Yeah, I've still managed to lose here.
This'll be over quick.
What adorable, ephemeral lives.
And I've seen a little bit of news to say that the new person in charge of Twitter is probably going to be a nightmare. And
Thankless job.
they have specifically, from what I hear, like, this isn't even really getting talked about too much. They've specifically put in a rule that says you can't post pictures of someone else without their explicit permission. Now, as an individual, as somebody who is not really a celebrity, I definitely wouldn't consider myself a celebrity. I understand that. Like, I haven't personally put out pictures of myself online, and I definitely haven't gone into the spotlight. So it makes a lot of sense for people who have an expectation of privacy, and this is how the law has always phrased it and thought of it. It's reasonable to have a reasonable expectation of privacy out there too. And at a certain level, we probably do need better laws for a modern age that quantify a level of expectation of privacy as far as photos that are taken of you too. Like, and it wouldn't have to be too technical to really say that if you send a photo to somebody, then you have an expectation of privacy that one person will not publicize or show that picture to someone else, whether it's a dick pic or something else, or just a standard photo. And that could work certainly for corporations too, is that, and even police, if police have footage of you for some reason, there very well may be an argument to make laws that say they cannot then share their information publicly with somebody else. And there definitely would be exceptions to that rule. because we don't want to create a scenario where parents can't share pictures of their kidnapped children, or parents in general just can't share regular school photos of their kids to friends and family. At a certain point, though, that wouldn't be too much of a deal, because the general assumption under law is that kids have no rights anyways.
I've got this under control.
But where it gets problematic is it's too simplistic. I hate to use the word problematic here, but I guess it is the right word to use. It's too simplistic of a rule when you're talking Twitter, and when you know specifically that this is probably because of that single senator, Republican senator, I believe, in the United States, reposting or retweeting a meme of Attack on Titan with another politician being a Titan being killed, which at a certain point, a meme and a joke, I don't think particularly one like that would really
100%
stand up to accusations of being legitimate death threats or anything like that. So if anything, it just made the senator look stupid and childish, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was just some intern that retweeted it for them, or somebody running the Twitter thing. But the problem there is you have a very public figure and a politician, and politicians, by far, their expectations of privacy should be the lowest of almost any person in the United States. We should be all up in politicians' business as far as what they're doing and who they're talking to. But yeah, to make such a simplistic rule to say that you just can't post pictures of people without their explicit permission is not the right way to go. Arguably, it is also very far away from how Twitter, and I think in a lot of ways, Jack Dorsey deserves a lot of credit for holding back the rest of his SJW employees. Twitter bent over backwards for the most part to tolerate things that President Trump posted on Twitter, whereas similar people, they were literally saying at the same time, similar people would have been banned from their platform for doing similar things, and they were trying to implement that. They had literally implemented different rules for different people because it was, in their argument, so relevant to the public to see what a president was tweeting, even if what a president was tweeting was against their rules. Now, arguably, politicians still should just not be on Twitter. It would be very, very logical to have a government-run Twitter website where it's just politicians and government employees posting. Thus, the government cannot censor people on any large scale. I imagine the government probably still could censor some people for some other reasons, because freedom of speech never covered like downright illegal things. Which, once again, I don't think an Attack on Titan meme, while stupid, is an actual legitimate, credible threat. And frankly, since Twitter has been wallowing and not adding any new features or improving in any way, it wouldn't be terrible if you had a post office, particularly the post office should run it, that was running something like Twitter, and just everybody could get on it, and that was that, and nobody was ever kicked off. for nearly anything short of something illegal. And frankly, because it's a government-run thing, it could be just a sweet honeypot where every time somebody posts something illegal, it just gets handed over to the proper authorities, and those people get arrested. Like, and that would be the real solution there. Is if something's illegal, then by all means, hand it over to the police, have that person arrested and thrown in jail. Then they'll immediately stop tweeting, and everything else should be just permissible. I think that would be a very nice system. Let's see.
Oh, my beloved Nava.
But yeah, that's not a good good idea. And honestly, it's not like that solves anything, because people still won't follow the rules on Twitter. And Twitter already had like harassment, anti-bullying harassment rules that the Attack on Titan post might have been falling under anyways, as far as a rule violation. And if it wasn't falling under a bullying rule violation, then I really have no idea why they would bother to take it down. Like, this is a great example of SJWs letting Democrats and leading Democrats to their own ruin. And it definitely feels a lot like Poe's Law, to use a old school phrase, where you just have a false flag person trolling or pretending to be a SJW, or a legitimate SJW that actually believes it, and then crying and pushing for censorship to make Democrats and liberals in general look as loony as they're often accused of being.
My beloved Nava.
Which, at a certain point, I think the liberals actually buy into that themselves. Like,
Sleep. Emergency mode activated.
yeah, a certain level, though, if we were going to really care about social media, which you probably shouldn't, the real solution is we need to figure out how to make people social before we even start to think about a social media service. As a programmer myself, I definitely think yeah, there's major ways you could improve social media services and create this awesome website, and then just nobody will use it because you don't have that venture capital and angel investing to promote it, and you don't have celebrities on it to promote it. In a lot of ways, Google Circles was that. You can certainly use Nextcloud to have your own federated social media services. It's maybe not even as full featured as Twitter is, but at that point you own your own servers, and nobody's going to tell you how to regulate or rule anything.
Verifying access.
But
100% string.
I would
0% fluff.
definitely
A spin and a twirl and
like I definitely question whether anything needs to be created until you can figure out how to get people to be sociable. I think specifically just having a big open platform for all conversation is part of the problem. And it would be better to potentially have
We'll cut you down.
Verifying access.
like it would be better to potentially just have like a limited website form. But yeah, the United States is theoretically trying to pass a law against bots buying up items. I don't know how you would actually regulate that, but like at least stopping people like Ticketmaster from buying up 80% of all the tickets at a venue concert, stopping bots from potentially buying every single like console sold. Those are all at least interesting ideas. Okay, I could have won in this turn.
Enemy
Or whatever.
identified.
Watch as I wind and
Enemy
wind.
identified.
Ow!
Enemy identified.
Accept harmony.
The work is never over.
But yeah, certainly with forums too, if you could get rid of the bots, then I think you could have smaller forums that were better regulated and run. There is an argument almost for a blockchain type concept as far as photos in general, where for you to be able to see and maintain the ability to see a photo, you had to keep it on a blockchain that tracked all the transitions and transfers of it. I don't know how you do that and not waste a huge amount of electricity, certainly, and I don't know if that's if there's really any way that you could stop a photo from being seen or just taking screenshots. At a certain point, you'd almost have to have a plugin that converted all photos into something like a QR code, and then you'd have to have apps for your browsers to convert that QR code into an encrypted image, and they'd have to be particularly secure apps that stopped stop people from taking screenshots. And still, even at that, you probably could take a picture of a picture of a screen. But yeah, there is some idea of that. Like, you don't need a crazy difficult blockchain concept. Just one good enough that won't be cracked and that would require a video to a photo or a video to actually be up there. It'd almost be like a torrent almost, where you could never seed the torrent yourself. If there always had to be that initial seeder, that initial poster of a torrent. Swordcraft and Shadowcraft, I guess, for the rest of the day. Probably not get very far with that. But yeah, if there was something along that concept, then you could regroup some privacy on photos. And self-destructing photos wouldn't be a terrible idea either. You can only have this photo for 24 hours a year. If you have to have a renewable certificate like the HTTPS SSL certificates you have for websites, there could be an idea there too. But I'm not sure exactly how you would create something like that. certainly you have some softwares that try to do things like that, where where photos disappear after a certain time. Snapchat, I think, was one of the first ones to do that, but that doesn't actually work. Let's start talking about video game news, though, because I've been rambling. GameDeveloper.com says Respawn is discontinuing the Titanfall sales, but says the incredible universe will continue. So, it's currently focused on supporting its free-to-play shooter Apex Legends. It's been kind of a long journey of them ignoring and dismissing Titanfall, despite the fact that it does have a fairly large fan base. They're discontinuing original sales of Titanfall. I think they're also removing them. It's been less than 7 years. And certainly that does not give the indication that they are setting up for a relaunch or remaster, because you wouldn't get rid of a game just because of that. Not in this order. Titanfall 2 was a slightly different game and less liked than Titanfall 1. And it launched about 5 years ago. And I assume it's still available for sale, but I wouldn't be surprised if you're going to have a surprise drop and announcements of just we're not selling this as of today, not to get it now because we're discontinuing sales in a month or so. If anything, I suspect this is actually really a licensing deal. They lost the licensing to the music or something in the game, and they couldn't renegotiate a re-upping of the license, or they just didn't care. It would be fairly silly and cynical on both parts if they literally eliminated the sales of Titanfall 1 just in the hopes that would increase sales of Apex Legends, because that definitely won't happen. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see what could definitely be construed as a legitimate review bomb happening on Apex Legends now, where Titanfall people review Apex Legends negatively, not because of the quality of its game, but because of the quality of the game support, the lack of game support for Titanfall. Which, depending on how you phrase a review there, some of those reviews, a negative review that says, be careful, this company is notorious for not supporting its products, is a legitimate statement to say. Maybe not a legitimate review of Apex Legends, but but it definitely is a statement that shows the feelings of people who would have had to have bought Apex Legends at some point, and how they feel about the game. And how you feel about a company is going to affect how you feel about a game. Plenty of people love McDonald's because they feel good about McDonald's. Plenty of people love Burger King because they feel good about Burger King. That there is no true objective opinions out there, and no emotionally detached opinions in most cases around games. And so if you're emotionally upset because Titanfall has been removed, and you go and review Apex Legends negatively because of that, some of those should be considered.
Resolution in my right hand, might in my left.
It definitely is a consideration, and something that people should hear and be allowed to say in a review. To say this company is notorious for not supporting its products. See Titanfall for an example. In the same way that it's legitimate to go into an EA football game for like NFL 2021 and say, look at what the EA is notorious for putting microtransactions in their sports games. See EA 2020 for an example.
Are you ready for
I need someone to inherit my skills.
Let's speed things up. Too slow.
You wouldn't.
Moving on, here we have a game called Micro Wasp Seekers, which looks too pink for its own good. Yeah, it looks like it's not really enough of a game. More of a collection of 3D models and asset flipping. Free, English only. Guess that's priced right. Here we have Race for Your Life. After today, I'll have the ad blocker back on, so well, you know, these pages will look a little bit better. Race for the Life looks very generic and simplistic. You can see the smooth scrolling isn't working too well today. $7.19 English, allegedly full audio. That is a lot of money for a very simplistic looking game.
loyalty is
I'm
ironclad.
Okay.
One step closer to victory. Harder armor. Steel yourself.
Die.
Best of luck to you.
My loyalty is ironclad.
Here we have a game called Prop Night, which I assume is just trying to make not name confusion with Fortnite and Prop Hunter. I feel like I've seen a game very similar to this. Seems kind of ridiculous to take the idea of Prop Hunter and take it out of Minecraft, but seems like we have seen companies try to do this. This is a online only game from the same developer as the Wild 8, the day before Radiant 1. I feel like these are name confusion games. Well, since it's a multiplayer game, I have to say no to Prop Night anyways. Here we have a game called Kira, K-E-H-R-A, which looks like nothing. Different voice lines and music as their sales point. That
than I am now.
It all ends here.
definitely makes me think that this is
show you what chivalry
an extremely low effort game. Early access, $4.74 English only.
My armor's been pierced.
I am definitely feeling twinges in my eyes still, so as soon as I need to look at the screen kind of consistently, it hasn't rested enough. I'm hoping that's all it needs is just rest.
Remember, every drop 100 droplets in a flurry of droplets.
I've still got far to go.
Okay. Here we have a game called Nano Machina, which just looks like an Asteroids clone of no real interest. $4.49, $4.99 English only. Yeah, we're starting to see some very low effort, expensive games again, which definitely makes it feel like nobody was really
Every drop 100 droplets in a single stroke.
nobody was really approving games over the Thanksgiving weekend. Here we have No Plan B, which
Train harder.
for some reason was on the fall list when it really doesn't feel like it deserved to have been on the fall list. $13.49, several languages. I'm gonna just take it off the fall list. Almost certainly that's just a case of me being bad at getting through games for those couple of weeks.
Hands up. I'll train harder.
Let's see. Next we have a game called Coworker, which Looks like nothing. Co-op tower defense game with in a factory with zombies, just throwing everything but including the kitchen sink into it. $7.49, English only. Then we have a game called Dark House, which is tagged as a walking simulator. Yep, it being the first day of the month, I believe they are testing the emergency citywide alarm, tornado, hurricane alarms, sirens. I think I can hear them. This is $10.79 English Russian. No to that.
Sounds about right.
Video Games Chronicle News. As Good Games posts year-to-date lost, CD Projekt pledges to bring it back to basics. There is definitely a thought, can Good Old Games go back to basics? Are there still old games that they can license and configure to run DOSBox to make sense? Or have they run out of things that they could use to see that happen?
Are you ready for truth? You are all watching.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Okay. What wouldn't get rush? This wouldn't get rush.
The uncharted desert awaits. What do we have here?
They've broken through our ranks.
You wouldn't.
This is our last push.
I'm ready
So
for more.
yeah,
What do we have here? Best of luck to you.
in a lot of ways, even though Good Old Games Galaxy kind of has an interesting launcher that combines other platforms together, or tries to,
I shall clear us a path.
Good Old Games is suffering in that they can't beat Epic Game Store by giving away free games. Not that much. They definitely can't beat Steam, because they're just not going to have the same listings. They've really only existed as well as they have in the fact that CD Projekt Red owned them, so if you bought a video card or got a code for The Witcher or Cyberpunk or something, it would be a Good Old Games code. Being run by a company is part of the problem. The reason why Valve, who barely and almost never makes video games, can get away with owning Steam is because they barely almost never make video games. If Valve had annual releases every year and they were taking potentially the top slot in sales
Too slow.
every year, then I think there would have been more of a push to not support Steam and have your own storefronts.
Too slow.
I'm hopeless.
Fastest blades in the east. Shashing.
What do we have here?
So they're returning to the concept of a curated selection of DRM-free games, which is a direct counter-argument to Steam, which is an uncurated selection of all, including DRM games, since Steam itself is a DRM service. It's just one that people don't really recognize so much as one or get annoyed by, compared to Denuvo, which people hate. Xbox Cloud Gaming is rolling out a clarity boost feature on Edge browsers. They really want you to use Edge browsers. They also really want you to use Windows 11, and everything I've heard about it screams don't bother using it at all. Wait for Windows 12 to be announced, if even that much. By the time Windows 12 is out, 4 to 6 years from now, let's say,
All I need's an opening and you're toast.
there is a decent argument that Valve may have finally gotten gaming working decently as far as a Linux operating system, and it would probably be another point for people to think about, hey, could I just run on Linux? A significant number of people did jump away from Windows when they went to Apple macOS, like, and iOS. And they either didn't have software that they were missing, or they weren't ever using anything that was explicitly Windows only software in the first place. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is, with SteamOS, a shift of gamers in particular that would move over to Steam operating system. If NVIDIA simply tomorrow announced they were going to open source their video graphics drivers, and actually did it, then it really would only be a couple years before gaming became incredibly better. Modern video game playing became incredibly better on Linux variants, particularly specific Linux variants that are designed and focused around gaming. And even in my case, while I do have a decent number of software things that I use, I wouldn't be surprised if most of them can run through Wine just fine, the Windows emulation, or
Let the duel begin.
are just replaced
You dare
completely.
to defy the shadows?
A significant portion of what at one time would have been Windows users also have left using Windows for just using Android or iOS, or just using their cell phones in general. So very little ties me to Windows other than the fact that a significant number of people use Windows. And I think the next generation of people probably won't use Windows. Programming certainly still easier on Windows than a cell phone, but maybe not that. Probably not easier than programming. Yeah, programming on Linux may actually be easier. Easier to install things like Python in Linux than it is to install in Windows. Yeah. And yeah, if Microsoft in particular loses the gaming crowd, they really won't have anything left as far as reasons why you would stick to Windows.
I paid so much for that app.
There's also a good question to ask about how many people have computers in a job that need computers versus how many people that have computers just because it's the old-fashioned way of things happening.
A precious life deserves a precious death.
Because, yeah, there probably are more specialized devices that could be designed for a lot of employees that are closer to cell phones or tablets, that would make more sense than giving them a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse and a desk. Like, there's a lot that is included in having a computer that 60% of the time may very well be used just to browse the internet or answer pointless emails. Like, email is a big factor, certainly.
Show me the
Where
limits of
there's
your
just a ton
will.
of pointless emails, pointless meetings, pointless PowerPoints.
Lose yourself in this final dance.
Moving on, according to Video Games Chronicles, Halo Infinite will give more XP for players the first 6 multiplayers each day. First 6 multiplayer games each day. starting on Wednesday. So they want you to play 6 games every day, kind of as a daily to get extra XP to level up faster. Which, that seems very much in line with what you would expect. The BBC iPlayer is now available for the PlayStation 5 in the UK. I imagine you can't actually use it outside of the UK. Maybe you can. Maybe you would need a VPN. Reanimate 3.
You look kinda haunted. No, literally.
Give me your stuff, and I might let you live.
Let's see.
Prepare yourself.
Looks like you've got another. Aren't you popular? I'll see you.
I don't think it's particularly a big statement that the BBC iPlayer took that long. I have to assume that's BBC's fault more than PlayStation's fault, but maybe not. It could very well be that the PlayStation's been dragging their heels to approve things. I don't really have time to read the article any further.
You too.
Indie studio has started a petition asking Warner Brothers to let it make a Mortal Kombat trilogy 4K. It claims the Mortal Kombat creator Ed Boon supports the plan, but Warner Brothers isn't convinced it'll sell. Which, yeah. It does definitely make an argument that you wouldn't want the people working on the newer Mortal Kombat, the next Mortal Kombat, to go back and remaster the old Mortal Kombat. You do kind of have a problem, certainly, as far as who is in charge of making the most recent Mortal Kombat games. Anyways, they were kind of awful. There's a danger also that you would license the game out to a company that's bad and they think they can remaster the games in 4K. Like, particularly in the case of Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3, those would have all been rotoscoped games, and you very well are going to have to just use, at best, something like a deep learning super sampling to upgrade the graphics. You're not going to be able to redraw the images from the rotoscopes. I guess you could just redraw the images and redraw all the characters as they are. Yeah, try that one again. There's also a question how much nostalgia would really sell here. Like, if you tried to sell me Mortal Kombat 1 in 4K for $60, I probably wouldn't want to buy it. And honestly, I don't know if you really get anything from it being in 4K. I would shoot for something like 2K, just a remaster in general. Don't even go for a resolution, instead go for higher frame rates and just making everything look really good. This company is called iBallistic, which would be very interesting. And I definitely wouldn't want it to particularly involve Ed Boon. It's probably not what you want to do. But that will get the audience here. It's kind of ridiculous, though, that this isn't being negotiated internally. That pretty much, I think, means that the negotiations have either not started at all, or that they are totally not a company that would act professionally and actually get the product done. Yeah. Just on the fact that Ed Boon is old, I think there's a good reason not to involve him, let alone any potential controversy that I can't remember if anything like that actually exists or not. But they definitely should think about putting the franchise of Mortal Kombat into someone else's hands. And these people's hands are as good as anyone else's, I think. But I don't know.
Deserves solemn silence.
Let's see.
Oh, Serpent King.
So, there you have a trailer of, like, I guess the most recent canonical Mortal Kombat game, and it had the whole Sonya Blade voice acting issue, where they had a wrestler or something voicing and doing the face model of Sonya Blade, and it looked awful and sounded awful. Like, the first 3 Mortal Kombat games will be downright quaint compared to these fatalities. And sentimentality certainly has changed since then. If anything, I think the kids, here's, I guess, what they're thinking. Which, these look fine, but I wouldn't really particularly know that this is in 4K either. Like, it might be shockingly disappointing to have 4K remasters come out. It's also worth remembering that Warner Brothers was just sold by AT&T, or acquired by AT&T. It's impossible to remember which was which. And so they're in a kind of position where they're thinking about new projects, or not thinking about new projects because of the transition acquisition.
This is definitive proof of God's authority.
Yeah, kids are a lot less violent nowadays, I think, than they used to be, and they don't really enjoy the violence stuff. That this has reached 100,000 supporters, which I don't think that's particularly a lot, but I feel like a lot of parents would be like, sure, play Mortal Kombat. I played it when I was a kid. I wouldn't be, if I was thinking about my hypothetical kids, and they said they wanted to play Mortal Kombat on the Nintendo Switch, and it was like Mortal Kombat 1, I would be fine with a 12-year-old playing that, and an edgy 14-year-old playing that. I'd be like, sure, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I almost certainly would have had the conversation with any hypothetical kids of mine already that to know the difference between fantasy and reality, and I would definitely monitor them to make sure that they do know the difference between fantasy and reality. But beyond that, I don't really find Mortal Kombat that offensive. Now, if they told me they wanted to play the most recent Mortal Kombat games, I would definitely give pause to like a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old at that point. I would definitely have to evaluate that on per child's level of development and maturity there. Because, yeah, they really have just pushed the bar more and more into violence and gore in particular. And in general, you don't see a lot of gore in Western forms of art at all. You see a lot of implied violence, and that's it. You hear gunshots go off, but you don't see the bullet go in. You don't see the blood gushing out. So yeah, there is definitely reasons why a Mortal Kombat remaster, while appreciated by its fans, wouldn't be best. Mortal Kombat as a series also is one of those series that I think more than most would do well for having a they would do well if they had a bundle that sold and offered a significant
Did I want gold
number of the side Mortal Kombat games too, because you're gonna have a real hard time selling some of those side Mortal Kombat games.
My blade and my ears work as one.
Moving on, the PlayStation 5 console was currently available at UK retailer Game. Update, the consoles have now sold out. So they did sell out fast. No surprise there. The Xbox Series X apparently was the best seller over Black Friday weekend, probably because it was the only one really available. But yeah, getting an Xbox Series S makes a lot of sense if you can get one and you have a decent backlog of Xbox 360 games, Xbox One games. Think we have to play this?
I'm coming for you.
Storm. Evolve. Reanimate 4.
This is my fight.
Hit that one, I guess.
pathetic?
Detestable.
Hit that one. Do that.
Are you in need of medicine?
You beckoned.
You see, I'm only getting stronger. Your flesh and life is too dear.
Yep. Video Games Chronicle says Alien Isolation's lead designer has joined Rare to work on a game called Everwide. The game was internally rebooted earlier this year, VGC understands. Which, yeah, this is not a game that I immediately recognize. Is this the one where they are the keepers of these ancient spirit-like creatures? I feel like there's two games that are kind of like that. And honestly, I don't think this is the one I'm thinking of. I'm not sure I've seen this one at all. Yeah, I think this is the one I'm thinking of. Where they are the keepers of these creatures. This whole trailer looks very spiritual and lovey-dovey, but kind of fails to show how the game is actually going to play, what the actual conflict is going to be. I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually very similar to a JRPG and they just don't want to show those elements to scare people away. The Metroid Dread Studio, which would be Mercury Stream, I believe, has announced a new third-person fantasy action RPG game set in a fantasy world, so not a direct, not yet another sequel to Metroid.
To arms! There's a battle underway!
The title is codenamed Project Iron and will be co-published by 505 Games. Is it new, or is it maybe something like a Zelda game? I wouldn't be surprised if it's a Zelda game. So, like, Mercury Stream as a company made Metroid Samus Returns and Castlevania Lords of Shadow, which I don't think were particularly the most favorite Castlevania games. And I suppose you get a tiny bit of actual usable information from that, but not a lot, really. It'll be years before they have anything to show, I'm sure. And it's frankly would have been just as easy for them to not announce anything. Starfield has two special step out of the world moments. Howard teases. I really think it's a mistake to have Todd Howard out there saying anything. I think we are more likely on the path that Todd Howard is finally going to just say something to piss off Microsoft and get fired, as Microsoft now owns Bethesda. Then we are closer to being on the path that Todd Howard is actually teasing towards a fairly close launch of Starfield and building hype for a game that actually should have that level of hype around it. Step out into the world moments, I suppose, are just what he would be using to describe the beginning of something like Skyrim, where you fairly quickly after the initial scene step out into a very large world in Skyrim. Although you kind of don't. There is an initial basic cutscene city that gets burnt by a dragon at the beginning. Then you go north, almost certainly you're pretty much blocked into going northish to a small town, and you spend not really even a lot of time in that small town before you go more north towards the central town of Skyrim that you then potentially will spend a decent amount of time in, and will get quests sending you in several different directions if you choose to take them. Although arguably Skyrim isn't even programmed that well as far as secretly leaving breadcrumbs to get you to go to different locations, and there are definitely some northern areas and towns that you don't go to unless you just actively know where they are on the map, since I don't believe they're marked by default, and just enter the towns. And once you enter a town, you usually have a series of new quests that unlock, but the reason to go to that town are fairly low, and so you're actually best off, if you're just trying to do quests. It's not the best way to play Skyrim, to get enough gold to just use the carts to travel you from town to town to town. And a better tutorial setup would be to have someone simply tell you the names of the towns and explain the areas of Skyrim and mark each of those parts on the map. There's just a lot, I think, that we would need to see from Starfield. It's got to be so different from Fallout, which has been kind of a disappointment. It's got to be so different from Skyrim. But it's got to be the combination of the best and better, frankly, of every Elder Scroll game and every Fallout game. And when you have the vastness of space, I wonder if there isn't going to be a lot of flying around in empty space, in the same way that there was kind of a lot of walking around. What I'd really want to hear from Todd Howard, instead of his consistent claims and hyping of things and people literally worshipping him, I want to hear that they have made some level of breakthrough in their procedural generation and their programming. That they have got something going on that is just great, that it's working with Microsoft Azure servers, and it's just simulating so much going on that the world is going to feel way bigger and better, and there's just going to be a lot more to do in it. And they've had plenty of time to potentially add those kinds of things. But Fallout 76, didn't really feel like it was a major improvement. So I don't really have any hope that Starfield is going to somehow be more of an improvement.
Loyalty is ironclad. March on! Harder armor! Steel yourself! My loyalty is ironclad.
I tried to watch The Expanse on Amazon Prime, and I could not get into it. I heard somebody on a podcast say they really liked it, but man, it seemed like it's been going on forever, but it's too dark, and every single thumbnail, scrolling through a lot of the like thumbnails and fast forwarding through different episodes, every single thumbnail looked the exact same with just different characters, and it seems like they very possibly have switched the main character several times.
100 droplets in a single stream. A flurry of droplets.
But yeah, I kind of failed miserably on that, which is fine. I don't need to waste a lot of time watching TV shows.
Enemy or no, you did good.
You know what I need to do is I need to quit playing ranked here, and instead I need to just get unranked victories. They're not even giving out treasure chests at the moment, so yeah. Let's go here. I should have done this 3 games ago. Unranked, rotation, and that. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Halo Infinite's campaign launch trailer has been released. Check it out if you're interested. Warzone's Pacific Mac Caldera's 15 district areas have now been detailed. People were already figuring out ways to cheat and see those. Of course, you have to care about Call of Duty Warzone, which I don't, so check that article if you're interested. The physical versions of the GTA Trilogy Definitive Edition have been delayed. There is also more rumors and suspicion that these games, the GTA Definitive Editions, were ported and built from the mobile ports, and that it was a port of a port, which arguably they should potentially just admit that at this point and move on. Here's that story I was talking about. A new U.S. bill could ban the use of console scalping bots. A group of politicians want to take actions against so-called Grinch bots. Of course, Ticketmaster would be heavily affected by this. And at a certain point, it does once again point out how capitalism is not this, no economic system is, but capitalism is often treated as this mystical religious force that will always work and always succeed no matter whatever circumstances, as long as you just put all of your all of your government policies in the category of free market. Let the market decide. Let the rich corporations decide. Basically, it definitely is a case where rich people are the people, or rich companies are the people that are using bots to buy up all the stock of consoles and scalp them later. You don't have somebody who's struggling to make rent buying thousands of consoles. That's just not a legitimate thing that would happen. But I suspect also with these government restrictions, if they were to be passed, it would be hard to enforce. And I heavily suspect that Ticketmaster and others, rich people, will shoot down these kinds of bills. These are kind of these people pleaser bills that get tied up in committee and then never actually get implemented. And yeah, at a certain level, it might be safer to say nothing at all and not make any bill until, or announce any bill until you either know it's going to not pass or pass.
This here's all mine. I shall paint over the canvas. Your life comes next.
At a certain level, as much as I have a distaste for capitalism and think that full open markets and free markets rarely succeed, for devices, there's two categories here. For devices like video game consoles, which are just wants and not needs, I kind of think it would be not worth your time to pass a law like that. Meanwhile, while a law like this is being argued and talked about, what's not being talked about is the fact that the United States healthcare system is inherently corrupt and ripping off everybody involved and costing the United States trillions upon trillions of dollars in extra expenses. And if somebody was to try and buy up all the insulin, that would already be covered almost certainly under like national security reasons that you wouldn't be allowed to do that using bots or otherwise, or under just hoarding reasons. And so I would much prefer to see a law passed that says better or free healthcare for all United States citizens instead of getting rid of scalper bots. And certainly people could come back and say, why not both? And my only response to that is that the United States Congress and Senate have proven that they can barely pass anything at this point, so they can't do both. They just they don't spend enough time actually doing their job, frankly, to pass both.
Activate, enhance, fire.
That is a case again where if only you could find that benevolent dictator that can be trusted and will live forever and not turn into a horrific dynasty of terrible dictators. If only you had that benevolent theoretical dictator, they could just pass law and their word was law. But even in the case of the Catholic Church, where you would think that the popes would have been the perfect human example of being benevolent dictators, since their word is literally God's word. At least when they're speaking on canonical matters, or ecumenical, I'm not pronouncing that word right, matters. Even in that case, you have popes that have actually accomplished very little as far as supporting Catholic citizens. Only,
Verifying access.
yeah, I imagine for this very small number of people that actually live in Vatican City, they probably do have free healthcare, but I don't know if it's particularly good. And I think the most recent pope has said that healthcare should be a right, and that really hasn't caused anything to happen. Moving on. New PlayStation 5 system update improves system performance, which is basically what they always say. Half the time I think these updates are literally just updating SSL encryption certificates for games, so that it's harder to crack games, or so that they can play new games. That was one of the things that Blu-ray players certainly did a lot of, is that you had to basically update them to play some Blu-rays, or at least that was a problem for a while there.
I go with the wind.
Moving on, new Xbox Game Pass titles for console, PC, and cloud have been announced. Quite a long list, it looks like here. Do we have an actual text version here?
This is how you do.
Yeah, several games here. One Piece Pirate Warriors for cloud, console, and PC might be one of the ones to check out, or Aliens Fireteam Elite. Among Us, of course, if you haven't played it already. December's PlayStation Plus games have been confirmed by Sony. Which... do we have a list here? Godfall seems to be one of them, but I'm not getting a good list here as far as what the other games are. So yeah, I'll just leave it at I don't know. Yeah, I'm running into the sleepiness issue again. I started a little later because I was trying to program. I gotta get the program to work.
Damn rain.
Let's speed things up. Too slow.
Shutting down.
We have a lot more news than we did over the weekend. I was kind of hoping that we would just have a short amount of news in general till the new year. Let's see, the delayed Fall Guys for Xbox and Switch releases are one of Mediatronic's top priorities, according to Video Games Chronicles.com, which that's not really news. They have a review for Solar Ash, Shadow of the Colossus meets Jet Set Radio in a sci-fi setting. Yeah, and I just don't look at reviews of games from anybody at this point. We already talked about Halo Infinite bonuses with 2XP. Apparently there will be monthly Halo Infinite bonuses. They're starting with 2XP boosts. A new Switch system update also improves system stability. It also has added support for a new Chinese rating system, which I don't know what makes a rating system. Oh, the CADPA. Okay, the Chinese, like, rating system in the sense of, is this game appropriate for a certain age? Which
I bring you the stars.
I guess you can't just, if you're going to do business in China, you're probably going to have to support that rating system. Even if you don't agree with some of the ratings, or feel like there's going to be a lot of propaganda around some of the ratings. And that there will be a significant number of games that aren't rated that won't be allowed to be sold in China. Like, that's already the case, is they have to be rated to be sold in China. But then I am leaning on that first statement heavily, that where I said, I guess if you're going to do business in China, by default, I think you don't do business in China. I think Nintendo should sell Switches all around China, Korea, India, Japan, Russia, places like that even. And then just have people smuggle them in instead of potentially having to do business in China and having to be controlled, or selling your soul to be controlled, to allow yourself to be controlled. And if that is a situation where that punishes the Chinese citizens, that's for the better of the world and the China citizens in general, that's probably for the better.
Enemy or no, you did good.
We desperately, China needs its citizenry to be dissatisfied with life in China enough that a major political shift could happen, or a straight up coup, rebellion could happen. Because until something like that happens, nothing is going to change, and China is just going to, has obviously shown itself that it's going to get more and more empirical, expanding, trying to take over the entire world. Let's not kid ourselves. And they're going to be more restrictive and ridiculous with their propaganda and their lies.
Activate. Enhance. Fire.
Moving on. The Video Games Chronicle says Steve Aoki's Virtual Sonic concert divided fans. He streamed for 60 minutes on Tuesday. The main bone of contention appears to be the limited number of actual Sonic music in the concert. While there was one or two nods to Sonic, such as Aoki's remix of the Stardust Speedway theme from Sonic CD, the vast majority of the set consisted of his own tracks. Okay, so it was a bait and switch. Which, okay. I'm frankly surprised we don't have more artists do things like that, and I suspect we do have artists that do a lot of bait and switch type things, and nobody bites. And had this guy not been talked about on Video Games Chronicles, I would have never heard of him or his set. Had he not tried to make it online, I think nobody would have heard him and nobody would have complained. If this was a case where Sega actually was involved and they licensed Sonic, then I guess once again shame on Sega for doing poor with their Sonic license, but that's not unheard of. That is the one case, I guess, where Sega either chose not to sue or threaten to sue the guy, where they probably should have, and put their foot down just to protect their brand. But it's not unheard of for things to happen like that. Lego is selling like lines of clothes and other kinds of toys besides building bricks that are pretty poor quality, or they're putting their names on sneakers and things like that, which doesn't really work well for their brand, and they get away with it.
I just want to fill the emptiness.
Let's see, the Australian government has rated Gran Turismo 7, which they've given it a G, so I guess it has only mildly impacting themes to give it a G rating. Very mildly impacting themes: no violence, language, sex, drugs, or nudity, which for a racing game, that is pretty much what you normally expect. Let's just go ahead and play this too. Let's see. Gamatsu says Buried Stars for PC is now available. This looks like a visual novel. It's from Line Games though. Yes, visual novel. I think we may have already actually talked about this one.
Best of luck to you.
Yep, it's already on the follow list. So I went back too far. We probably also talked about DNF Duel Inquisitors trailer. Check it out if you're interested. I believe this is a fighting game. Once again, the blur is intentional. And I think we also talked about ACA Neo Geo, which seems to be a collection of Neo Geo games for iOS and Android. Seems like they really are trying to resell some old arcade games at what I assume is going to be a premium price.
Open wide. Shutting down.
See, Blaze Blue Alternative Dark War to end its service on January 31st in Japan. The mobile game apparently hasn't even been out for a year. That is the other side, certainly, of a lot of these mobile games, is that they come out and they try them and then they fail fairly miserably very quickly.
Coming at you.
The horror visual novel Apathy Narugami Gakuin Nana Fugishi has been announced for Switch, coming out in the summer of 2022 in Japan. It's definitely looks like a different way to animate characters. I don't even know what this art style is called, what the Japanese would refer this to. It definitely isn't the moe art style. That you have long, slinky characters, small eyes, and the anime girls aren't showing giant boobs for their proportions. If anything, they're stretched out and fairly skinny and long, like they're starving to death, and I think that's in part what they're going for. Still different hairstyles and colors, which has been a tradition amongst anime for a very long time. They're in a school uniform, but a very standard, realistic school uniform. They're not wearing ties. They don't really have different colors. Here, the bow is different here, but that's it. There's not belts. There's not ridiculous patterns. Like, I don't think hyper realistic would be the right way. I wonder if this isn't something that would just fall under a category of like Goro. I don't know if I'm using that phrase right, but as far as a grotesque horror art style, this teaser and trailer is mostly text. Then, yeah.
Completing termination sequence.
A gory horror style very well is like what's here, what you might describe that as. Okay. Ghost Evolve 0.
Do your
Let's try
worst, evil
that.
spirit.
I'm coming for you.
Prepare yourself.
Ah, detestable. A fitting end.
This is my fight.
Let's see. Moving on. Triangle Strategy character and story trailer number 1. Roland Glenbrook, the young prince of Glenbrook. I haven't heard anything about this. It looks like it's a JRPG game.
Now the fight begins.
It's a Square Enix game,
No handiwork needed.
which mostly Square Enix games are JRPG games. And yeah, that's what it looks like. It might be more of a positional placement strategy game. Seems like we're maybe seeing a little bit more of those these days. And that might be just the way in which things are going to go. Let's see.
make me look too moany.
You see, I'm only getting stronger.
Damn rain.
Let's see. I guess we'll just play this.
Are you in need of medicine?
Castle of Shikigami 2 launches December 6th for PC in 2022 for Switch. Which,
Hostile life forms
what kind of
detected.
game is it? Apparently it's a shoot 'em up game. Let's just check out the Steam page. Yep, it's a shoot 'em up game. Those are not the types of games I'm interested in. Crimson Clover World Explosion for PC launches December 6th, currently already available for the Switch. It too is a shoot 'em up game, so not interested. Another Eden the Cat Beyond Time and Space teases a Chrono Cross collaboration announcement for December 4th. I think that is
You're through.
probably
The design fault
a
lies with you.
decent tease. I don't recognize another Eden the Cat Beyond Time and Space though. And if anything, it shows that Square Enix is not a very good curator of their properties, which we kind of already knew that. Eve Ghost Enemies has been announced for PS4 and Switch. Which, yeah. This is maybe a visual novel again. Yep. So we're getting a lot of announcements now to catch up. Clyde the Snail for PC launches on December 15th. It's currently available for the PS4. This is a game I think I briefly heard about and then kind of quickly forgot about. Playing as a snail in the top-down hack and slash game. The gimmick of him being a snail probably indicates that it might not be that good of a game. Like, more often than not, when I've seen somebody put in a gimmick for something like that, it's to cover up for making a fairly generic like generic type game.
I've struck it. Get in there.
Damage heavy.
But it certainly would just revolve around the level of quality of the writing and the level design. We already talked about this. 505 Games and Marcus Stream will co-publish and co-develop a new third-person action RPG. Almost certainly, I think one of these two companies will either be merged into the other or be taken off the project. It seems unbelievable that by the time this game comes out, they both will be happily still working together. Like, the management styles of companies are just too different, too likely to be different. Let's see, Starfield Into the Starfield, the Endless Pursuit developer diary was launched, and I imagine that's where some of these Starfield quotes and articles came from. I don't really care enough about Starfield.
There's a
Particularly, nobody should care about Starfield until it's actually out and people have reviewed it a little bit. A game called Burashana, Rising Flower of Ginpai, is coming to the West in summer of 2022. That definitely does not feel like a game that would come to the West just by the name alone. It feels like it's an otome visual novel, young maiden visual novel. Yes, it is. And yeah, otherwise it looks fine. It is also one of these visual novels set more in the samurai times, feudal times of Japan, which are harder to translate to the West, certainly. Is it coming to the Switch only? Yeah. I think we are definitely seeing a case where anything that was made for the Switch in Japan is just getting fairly, like, fast-tracked as far as approval on the Switch in the West. And since it's just eShop listings, I don't think there's any real cost to that. All you have to do is a fairly decent job of translating it to English and then sell it and then move on with your life. PC and Switch game here called Card Shark has been delayed to 2022. It's an adventure game full of cunning, intrigue, and delectable deceit. I don't think this game was announced. I don't remember any of it. If it was announced, it may have been announced like in the last couple of weeks where I wasn't really paying attention, and it's already just being delayed. Yeah. So that's another one of those articles that just really goes to show that there's not a good reason to even care about initial announcements on games or even hear them, because they're almost 100% of the time followed up by some small delay at the very least.
Let's speed things up. Too slow.
A PC game called Where the Heart Leads is coming to PC in August of 2022. It was on the PS4. First launched on the PS4 on July 13th. This might just be a walking simulator experience. I mean, it looks almost like it's a survival city management game. They're tagging it as an adventure game. Yeah, I suspect, like, looking at these screenshots, it looks more like an adventure game. I'm not even going to bother to put things like this on the follow list, though. You don't even have a actual release date. Let's see. Dying Light 2 Stay Human has gone gold according to Gametsu.
Contribute to my boredom, why don't you?
Which, yeah, this game has been delayed several times. It's past the point in which it should have come out. Although in all fairness, it might be in a good position to come out now, considering of the pandemic and all the other shortages. The Sons of the Forest game has been delayed to May 20th, 2022. This is a PC game, and well, this image looks weird. Seems like it's mostly a zombie game where they're not quite zombies and kind of a survival game. There was a game called The Forest, and I wonder if this is the sequel to The Forest. I suspect it might be. Yeah. Which I don't know if there is a decent enough experience to play The Forest. One, particularly if you're playing single player. Yeah, I don't know if there's enough there that would then make me want to potentially play a sequel to it. Aliens Fireteam Elite is coming to Xbox Game Pass for console and PC on December 14th alongside a Season 2 update, so they're still trying to support it.
Is not a warning.
Horizon Forbidden West has been rated by the Australian ratings
Should have been quicker.
group. Let's see if we can maybe
Oh, my beloved lover.
Energy!
see if we can get rid of some of this without getting rid of everything. There you go. I think that will work a little bit better. And while we're at it, let's get rid of the share button. Just to keep it visually cleaner. So yeah, Horizon Forbidden West is themes and violence, has moderate impact. Its language has mild impact. Its sex has very mild impact. So either they do have sex in the game but no nudity, or Australia as a government is gonna just rate everything for being sexy if you have a
Got a job to do.
female protagonist, which would be incredibly unfair, and I suspect is not the real case.
How's that? I'll make your taste buds quiver.
Die, cretin.
My loyalty is ironclad. March
Gotta
on!
hurry here.
Harder armor! Steel yourself!
Someone call tech support!
My loyalty is ironclad. My armor has been pierced!
Let's see if we can actually clean this up a little bit more better. See if I get rid of that. Of that. Still doesn't really center things. Really don't have time to be messing with this.
Enemy or no, you did good.
And I just keep losing. Yeah, I don't think I can make it look any better, unfortunately. And I definitely don't have time to mess with it, so. And we're definitely not wasting anything. Not really accomplishing anything. Let's see, the Shantae and the Seven Sirens Spectacular Superstar update is now available for free. It adds 4 new modes. One thing it adds is the definitive mode, which is Rebalance for greater challenges includes additional content and map features. So if you wanted to play the game in its originally released mode, legacy mode, but oddly it also gives you a beginner's mode, which definitely whenever I get around to playing Seven Sirens, I will balance between either playing legacy mode or beginner mode, because the last Shantae game I tried to play had considerably difficult sections and then added a whole bunch of DLC to make the game a lot more difficult. Shantae as a series definitely feels like it's for experts at playing at Shantae and nothing else. So I appreciate seeing the concept of a beginner mode. And they probably should add that to some of their previous games. Some of their previous games are also fairly short, so it may not matter. There's also a full deck mode in which you start with all of the monster cards unlocked, which give you like bonuses or abilities. I think this game is maybe a little bit more Metroidvania than some of the previous Shantae games. And then Rule Breaker mode lets you equip as many of the monster cards as you want, where full deck mode still limits you to a certain number of Rule Breaker of monster cards. I follow the Way Forward YouTube channel, so I saw the announcement for this. It was only about a minute or so, so that's how I know all of that without having to read it. Let's see, Death's Gambit Afterlife for the PS4 is now available, which I recognize a game name called Death's Gambit, but I don't actually know what it is. It looks like it's kind of a high precision platformer with hack and slash elements. Looks like it's some very dark imagery and really difficult. There might be enough focus on the hack and slashing of a game like this and the Metroidvania of a game like this where I might consider it. I assume Death's Gambit Afterlife is a update to Death's Gambit. It's apparently a free update for existing owners. Also,
What did I want gold again? I want to get it all back.
let's go through a few games. We don't have to go through everything today, but I also don't want to leave a whole bunch of games on the fall list or to look at for Friday. Like this game, Striving Light, I think we already looked at as kind of a top-down hack and slash and dismissed. PBX we looked at. Candy Maker, if we didn't look at it, it looks like it's not very good as a game. Early access for no real reason. Yeah, the smooth scrolling is not working today. $9.99 English only. Paper Planet. Looks like nothing. I think we looked at that also. OP Lightus AV. Looks like a low effort top-down twin stick shooter. Early access, free to play, single player, English only. Yeah, I don't know why the smooth scrolling isn't working. It kind of should be.
The uncharted desert awaits. What do we have here?
Mm-hmm. Here we have a game called Dungeons of Honor, which looks more like a tech demo than an actual game, I would say. Early access, $9.39. Here we have a game called Typing Land, which honestly this doesn't look too bad for a typing game. I think there might be an argument to put this on the fall list and see if there's any reviews around it. Let's see what the price is. $4.99, 8 languages. Somewhat believable, although I imagine when you look at the languages, like a Chinese keyboard is probably not supported, a Japanese keyboard is not supported, a Korean keyboard is probably not supported in the sense that of the old-fashioned type of keyboards that you might have but probably don't for computers. You probably would have to type English words in with English letters for this game, not some of the systems that are, I think, built straight into Windows where you can type in how something is sounded out and then it will automatically translate that into into the Asian language equivalent. I think the way you're supposed to win with this deck is you're supposed to play a lot of these skullfishes and a lot of the other characters. Just have them do as much damage as possible with the last words. Here we have a game called Splatformer, which looks like nothing. It's $2.99 English only. Here we have Sinistar Lite version. Simple 2D action game centered on the themes of masochistic tendencies, yearning for death, as well as despair at being attacked by terrifying beings. Well, almost certainly this is the light version of a game that has nudity in it, but I think there might be a sales point here for a lot of people because this is 92% positive already. $4.99. It was originally released in 2019 on DL site. So I wonder if this might be a case where there is a patch or a patch incoming potentially.
Why would the dead need a living
Or
wage?
this is just a way in which a DL site as a publisher is trying to double dip and make money. I'm gonna put this on the follow list, and then what we would see is there a non-light version of Sinistar? Doesn't seem like it, but there does seem to be a decent number of positively reviewed games that they've published. They all do kind of feel like they might be adult content games, but even in the case of this game, like, what you're not seeing here is a generic visual novel or a generic RPG with an anime girl with big breasts. You seem to have these arrows. Maybe that's the number of jumps you can make, or maybe that's the number of attacks or ammo. You have a different kind of isometric perspective here. You seem to be wandering around a lot more than I would generally expect as a side-scrolling game. Yeah, she shoots arrows. I'm watching the trailer. She's fighting spiders and platforming, and yeah. Now, arguably, from what I'm seeing here, while there may be some masochistic themes or tendencies here, like an Iron Maiden grabbing you and stabbing you. Seems to be the only thing that's really being depicted here. Doesn't feel like there's a lot of masochism happening in the demo video. And arguably, if you take masochism outside of the realm of the bedroom and a sexual masochistic fetish, masochism is something you could probably diagnose half of video game characters as having. Pretty much most of the video game characters seem to enjoy getting shot at or hurt, and seem to enjoy the risk and the thrill of that. Although, I guess most stories at least imply they don't enjoy that. And masochism, certainly outside of the bedroom fetish, is probably, I would classify as incredibly dangerous and something that people should seek mental health assistance from. Yeah, because yeah, you wouldn't really want somebody out there just hurting themselves, cutting themselves. I'm actually surprised there aren't more cutters depicted in video games. But yeah, as far as Sinistar, I guess I have to just leave it on the fall list and see how the reviews go. It'd be an interesting game to cover, certainly, but it is also one of those games that would almost have to be gifted to me, as I'm just too busy covering other things. Man, I just cannot get lucky enough. And even though you are getting little bits of XP, it's totally not worth it. Let's just play something different and see if we can get a win. Here we have a game called Magenta Box, which looks like nothing. $2.99, English full audio. Here we have a game called Thrustlander, which looks like nothing. $14.99, English full audio. Here we have a game called Floor's Lava, which looks like just a platformer of no interest. $12.74, English, allegedly full audio. Here we have something just called Something, which just seems to be a collection of silhouettes. I think this might be a getting over it with Benet Foddy platformer game. Yep, that's all it is a platforming game. Get to the top. Yep, I am uninterested in that. $3.99, English only. Let's see. Gamatsu has Euro Kill, the culmination games for the PS5, PS4, Switch, launching April 14th in Japan. We've seen a lot of wind up for these games, which I think it's a shoot 'em up. Yep, half shoot 'em up, half visual novel. It never really struck me as particularly that interesting. Apparently, Monochrome Mobius Toki no Takai development is 85 to 90% complete. Although, in all fairness, I never trust any of those numbers. I don't think anybody should. It's fairly impossible to prove that you're anywhere close to 100% complete until you look at it from a retrospective point. particularly in programming, because
Let's play.
you could be in beta and thus not adding any new code or any features and just bug fixing forever, theoretically. And what does completion really look like or even mean in programming is definitely a subject for argument, at least. Let's see, Komatsu has the Famitsu review scores for issue 1722. I imagine Famitsu is more than just a magazine that issues reviews. Big Brain Academy gets 30 out of 40, particularly low. Elga Sumiko Garashi Aoi Tsukiyo no Maho no Ko Game da Asobo Iga no Sekai was 30 out of 40. That is a long mouthful. The Kids We Were Complete Edition is 32 out of 40, which isn't particularly good. And then YouTuber's Life 2 is an awful game at 26 out of 40. And I assume that that isn't just a case of the reviewers not being able to relate to YouTubers. I would very much assume that that is just a case that it is actually an awful game. See, Deep Rock Galactic is coming to PS5, PS4 in January of 2022. It's currently available on Xbox One and PC. I'd have to be kind of reminded what the game actually is. Like, this screenshot isn't really helping me much. I guess we'll check out the Steam page for it. Overwhelmingly positive, looter shooter, co-op, player versus player. Okay. So hopefully it still has an audience. It does say it has single player elements to it. Let's see how many peaked today. 16,000. I guess I'll put this on the follow list and think about it, but almost certainly I would look at this game and then just immediately dismiss it. Yeah, this is a game that I don't think even Mob Rule can convince me to play. But I mean, man, when you have 89,000 reviews and 97% of them are positive, that does speak a lot to quality. Alright, well, let's go ahead and heal this.
You could use some shine
Hit this.
yourself.
Play this in my turn. Let's see. Yokazi Night Japanese Indie Game Showcase is set for December 4th. So this isn't actually a game, this is just a tease of a event. Which there might be something hinted in this imagery, but I wouldn't be surprised if there actually isn't. I don't know what the video has more to show. It's just a little animation. The one thing I guess you would say about this is he's touching something that looks a lot more like a Switch than a PlayStation controller. Which definitely would be in line with the Japanese audience, the Japanese indie game development audience, being happier with Nintendo at the moment than Sony. Okay. What else are we gonna do? I guess you do this one, this one, and in return. Fire Girl Hack and Splash Rescue for PS4 and Xbox Series and PS5 and Xbox One and Switch has been delayed to 2022. I think we already had known that. It's pretty much the same story for every game. Ghost Runner expansion Project Hell launches January 27th. And I imagine expansions are easier than launching a full game. Ghost Runner, if I recall correctly, was this high action parkour game with time rewinding mechanics. Almost like a Mirror's Edge if you put a better fighting mechanic in Mirror's Edge, the original Mirror's Edge. Would, I think, be a good way to describe it.
Mankind's hatred is a curse.
Here we have a game on Steam called Primer Flows. It's just tagged as a tabletop and visual novel game. It looks like it's a collection of just terrible art. It really doesn't feel like there's actually a game here, other than a terrible Arkanoid clone. $7.79 English only. No to that. Here we have a game called Void Dementia, which looks like it might be an anime RPG game from a company I don't recognize. Let's see, early access, $13.49 English and Korean. Oh, okay, so maybe it's a Korean company. That would explain why I don't recognize it. There might be something here, but then there might be literally kind of nothing here. Like, you might very well be always fighting in a void, and there might be little to do otherwise. This also feels like something that could have potentially been a mobile game. If you're just gonna always be on an infinite run, hacking and slashing people. I'll give it a follow, but I also want to see if this developer has made anything else. I guess they haven't.
This is how you do fireworks.
Alright. Let's see. Next we have a game called Unfair Souls Darkest Grind, which sounds like a specifically written title to disinterest me. Yeah, I don't think there's a real game here. $3.99 English, allegedly full audio. I suspect what this is a few levels designed to just kill you over and over again. And if you are a good enough player, you'd actually beat the game in less than 20 minutes. Let's see. MXGP 2021 official motocross game. We'll put that on the follow list and see how people like it. $49.99. Whole bunch of languages. Allegedly full audio in all of them. I suspect that might be the case in this instance. Gears of Phantasm, Destiny Tailored Act 1 is just an RPG Maker game. We can dismiss that easily. Early access $14.99. Everything just early access. We have a game called Metaverse King, which sounds like it's some kind of karaoke game in Russian. Enjoy singing in a vast VR console hall, but oh, it does require VR. It's $18.99. It's English and Korean. There's some songs here. One from BTS, two from Blackpink, and I recognize those bands. I don't recognize the rest of these. I feel like what they've done here is they've just stolen the music, and this game may very quickly get taken down. Regardless, even if it's not taken down, it doesn't look like much of a game, and that is definitely not much of a soundtrack listing. Alright. Let's see, next we have Heroes of Egypt, The Curse of Sethos. which looks like one of the resource management games. No
Beautiful
interest.
flowers in
I
this
always wanted to
section.
play an Egyptian themed game, ancient Egyptian themed game, but they very rarely come about, and they seemingly I've yet to find one that actually looks good. $9.99 English and German.
Let's play.
Here we have a game called Shadow Cave, which looks like nothing. $7.79 English only. There's a game called Afterthought, which looks like it's a fast-paced platforming jumping game. Almost like a reverse pachinko game. Yeah, I don't feel like there's much of that. At a certain level, that kind of is exactly what Sonic games should be, is just this kind of pachinko game where you can't take damage and you're just going for the best score. But even in the way that most Sonic games are designed, there is a...
You were done for.
like, there's this level of...
Ow! You fairies are the best.
of requirement in Sonic games. Sorry. Where the Sonic games, then to really get the good ending on Sonic games, you have to get a gem in every level. Where if it was just a score-based thing and you're just going for the highest score at the end of the game, that'd probably be nicer. I can see somebody posted and retracted their message on chat, so I don't know what that was about. But I will say, yes, I see you. If you want to post something again.
I'll get it right this time.
I'm gonna win here probably, but it's gonna take a while. Here we have a game on Steam called Box Enigma, which looks like nothing of interest. 84 cents, English only. Here we have a game called Super Bomb in Nas,
And those acorns flying out
which
of the
looks
place.
like garbage. 99 cents, English, Spain, Spanish, Portuguese, Brazil.
Let's play. Chance for a grand
Here we have a game called Arrows,
Let's play. Chance for a
which looks like nothing.
Let's play.
84 cents, English, allegedly full audio. They're trying here. Let's see. Allied followers in play, that would be 2.
Is that how you treat a lady?
Let's see, we have a game on Steam called Attack of Undo Zai.
A withered
Which-
life can no longer tell of its plight.
Let's play.
I don't know if there's a real game here or not. It looks fairly flashy, but
Let's play.
it might just be trying to sell very little on anime furry characters. Even that, though, does look like it's a slightly different art style, that they aren't just asset flipping the cheapest of the cheapest 3D models. So I'll cut this one a bone as a free-to-play game with single player and online co-op. Maybe there is something here. but I suspect there's probably not. And this is closer to a demo or a student project, but it's not being described as a student project, and that's going to be problematic. Make it more difficult to potentially justify covering that.
Ow!
The words escaped me.
Okay.
The real battle begins. Faith is an no. The smiles are not free.
I might as well play that and win. Yeah, I kind of wish this was labeled as a student project. But it really isn't. It kind of looks like it might be a mobile game that's being ported, but even at that, it looks fairly nice for a mobile game. Odd that it's free with no in-app purchases.
I wasn't supposed
Let's
to lose
see.
here.
Here we have a game on Steam called Mushroom Hunter, which looks like nothing. $7.79, English only.
I pray that you will be freed from suffering.
Well, that got me one victory, but it's not getting me anywhere close to a Swordcraft or Shadowcraft victory. Which we may just try and get one more victory unranked in general. Let me see if I can.
To arms! There's a battle underway!
Well,
Prepare
seemingly
for defeat.
you cannot even see a retracted message as the moderator. So I guess if you go into a chat on YouTube and say something awful and then retract it really fast, the moderator, if they don't see it, can't go back and look at the history. Which I suppose is fair enough. Let's see, let's move on. Let's see, Gamatsu has the Xbox Game Pass, adding Stardew Valley, Final Fantasy 13-2, XP, One Piece, Pirate Warriors 4, and more in early December. This is Final Fantasy 13-2, I guess. I think we generally talked about this, but didn't have the full list. Yeah. And a few games are leaving, apparently. Let's see, Digimon Survive has been rated by the ESRB as T for teen for crude humor, fantasy violence, language, and mild blood. I wonder if crude humor is, well, it says the words S word, B word, and P, I guess that's I, pissed. Cartoony poo. Yeah, there's a poop toss. There's a bloodstained corpse in a cutscene. What you aren't seeing here, though, in Digimon Survive, and this is what I think I had heard about already and probably haven't talked about up until this point, was even in the Japanese version of Digimon Survive, it seems like they have updated / censored some of the original Digimon to be a little less scantily clad. Like I think Angelmon is the female Angelmon, or female Angel Digimon, if it's not called Angelmon, in particular was kind of scantily clad. A couple of the others were kind of scantily clad, or they would have
No one
like
gets past me.
tight, skin tight bodysuit like outfits that if you're animating somebody and they have skin tight clothes that are sticking to every angle of a female form or a male form, then they're effectively as close to being naked as you can get. But yeah, it does seem like they've tried to make it more Western friendly and get rid of the lewdness, the skin showing. Which, yeah, people in the United States in particular still have a major hang up about kids seeing any flesh at all. Regardless of the fact that it's never really challenged that people in bikinis, two-piece bikinis, will be seen by kids almost certainly on a beach, and they will see a lot more skin there. Moving on, Dynasty Warriors 9 Empress demo for the PS5 and Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch is now available in Japan. Another Warriors games, they come out with one every couple of months, basically. A game called Atri My Dear Moments, and a game called Adabana Odd Tales are coming to the Switch, iOS, and Android. I assume these are visual novels. This is from Aniplex.exe, so Aniplex is maybe getting into the visual novel publishing game, which, yeah, they may not have a lot more going for them, so maybe their best bet.
The uncharted desert awaits. What do we have here?
I'll see you in purgatory.
Let's see. Gematsu has the PlayStation Plus free games for December 2021 announced, which is Godfall Challenge Edition, Lego DC Supervillains, probably without any of the DLC, and Mortal Shell.
Best of luck to you.
I really would like to figure out what the thing is. There we go. I guess it's just sometimes an advertisement pops up and then gets that. The ad gets blocked, but the frame doesn't get blocked. So now these should work. Solar Ash launch trailer is on Gematsu if you're interested in looking at that. The psychological survival thriller Aftermath has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Let's see, what is this? Yeah. It seems like it is a horror game in the aftermath of a zombie apocalypse. We saw something similar to this, where it was a aftermath pretty much of a zombie apocalypse in a city. Let's hit that.
The sunlight is unwelcoming.
See if that guy decides to attack it or not. We already talked about it, but here's the wall of text as far as them Respawn discontinuing Titanfall. I don't even know if it's not the parent company Respawn, but I'm gonna have to just assume it is Respawn.
You have summoned the blade of purgation here.
They say they're keeping the servers live for the dedicated player base. We'll see how long that lasts, though. Today, now they're only focused on Titanfall 2 and Apex Legends. Although this is phrased more that they are still kind of focused on Titanfall 2, which I half question if that's true. With every year and with improved technology and cheaper server equipment, it gets harder and harder to believe that it's really that expensive or that difficult to maintain existing servers. But maybe with the shortage in particular, that is going to be a case. I tell you one thing that definitely terrifies me as a YouTuber is at some point, if YouTube ever decided to say, hey, you're not profitable and we're going to just get rid of all of your footage and delete it, like that would be a nightmare scenario. I don't have enough hard drive space to even get like low res versions of my footage and back it up locally. It's a big problem, but I can't afford a solution around it. But yeah, that is certainly something that terrifies me, is if all of my footage, all my videos were just deleted because YouTube in particular singled me out, or in general, more likely in general, they would just say, we're going to get rid of all content on our platform that's not monetized. But at a certain point, I think YouTube also falls apart on its favorite excuse if they get rid of all content that's not monetized, because their constant first excuse for anything is, well, we have over 1 billion hours uploaded every minute, so we can't possibly hand moderate things, when they've been making that same excuse since day one and they never had any intention to try. We already talked about this, but game developer has the same story. CD Projekt has deemed the storefront Good Old Games as a challenge. They have a new story here. The Lucasfilm Games Tammy Barrowick looks back on the Scum U and Freddy Fish. I guess Scum U would be the Scum universe. I've never seen Scum U. It's not a Scum engine, is it? This is an article I think I actually would like to read. There definitely was a problem, I think, as far as the Lucasfilm Games at a certain point when several of the people left Lucasfilm to go and make humongous games, kids games. There seemed to have been probably a falling out of some small amount, maybe not a big falling out. Let's see, game developer also has the article here, feature behind Back 4 Blood's ingenious card system. I would counter this feature in this advertisement article with the fact that I don't think too many people are playing Back 4 Blood anymore. Definitely not hearing people talking about it. Although, in all fairness, the people that I hear talking about video games are just mostly Giant Bomb people, and they don't talk about any game after the week is launched because they're on to the next game, and they barely play any games. They have the Independent Games Festival juries for the Nuovo Design and Narrative Awards at GDC 2022. If you're interested in that, again, same parent company owns game developer as the GDC in particular. The former DICE creative director is now the vice president of editorial at Ubisoft. Fauzi Mesmar apparently wrote one of the first game design books in Arabic. Interesting. It's kind of crazy that his name is so small, though. I mean, that is a really small font. They're trying to squeeze something in or trying to hide his name. I guess they're not really trying that hard to hide his name. Yeah, I watched that Netflix series Midnight Mass, which I wouldn't recommend it. It's incredibly slow, and I'm disappointed slightly in myself that I couldn't sit through it, but it's a really, really slow series that definitely is focused around characterization and dialogue and things that you just don't really have in most shows, where I was expecting it to be a lot more horror based. It's from some of the same creators as the House on Haunted Hill, but unlike the House on Haunted Hill, there's nowhere as many horror effects and visual effects to keep your attention. It's not really that scary of a show, as even though it is kind of a horror show.
I'm already a proper lady, you know.
If anything, the main horror in Midnight Mass is just the horror of humanity.
You're done for.
And I think you heavily will have a different experience whether you're familiar with Catholic masses or not, since that is the vast majority of what you see in every episode is at least one mass, maybe not a full mass. It's not a 3-hour event, but you do see a abridged sermon.
The real battle begins. The battlefield is my cutting board.
At the very least. But yeah, I don't think it was that good.
No way! Stop!
And one of the things that I think was particularly bad about it was, while this was heavily centric around a Catholic community, or mostly Catholic community, there was a distinctly Muslim sheriff that
If they don't kill you first.
it felt like at the beginning they were going to try and treat in a normal, realistic way, and by the end of it, you straight up just having the bad guy in the series just calling him a raghead, like, and he's hardly, while being Muslim, he's hardly presenting as a Middle Eastern Muslim. He's very much integrated as the sheriff of the city, not wearing any scarves or headwear or anything like that. And it definitely felt like it was a characterization, and it was lines of dialogue written by an SJW just wanting to say this is what would happen, versus it being very natural and making sense.
1, 2. Now you've done it.
But yeah, I don't think it was a well-written, well-thought-out series. I think you could take the same concept and take it further in action, in actual action that happens, which would definitely change the ending of it. Or you just have to have a better writer, somebody that can really keep people's attention. Arguably,
Is that how you treat a lady?
the Haunting of Hill House also succeeded very well because it
Cross the line.
jumped around telling stories quite a bit, whereas Midnight Mass sticks on the same story, and it's a very linear way of telling stories. So had they been jumping around from character to character, and you're only getting bits, a small bit and then a flashback and a flash forward, that might have given more ups and downs as far as the stress of trying to pay attention and ingest everything that you're seeing and being told. Like, it feels like and I often say this in video games, it feels like in Midnight Mass it was just always rising action throughout the entirety of the miniseries, and there's just never any falling action to think about, like, what you've seen, what you've been told, to better ingest that and sit with it for a while. When you compare that to something like a more traditional kind of garbage Friday the 13th movie, you definitely have points in the Friday the 13th movies where it's falling action, it's light outside, there's very little chance that Freddy Krueger is going to show up and try and kill you. And you need that. It wouldn't be a very good Friday the 13th movie if it was just Freddy shows up in the first scene and he's just attacking people straight for 2 hours. And it just gets more and more intense.
If they don't kill you first.
Moving on, back to video game news. GameDeveloper.com says more Blizzard employees are leaving the company due to the ongoing crisis. That is kind of going to be hard to prove. I mean, really, you would only need one person to leave the company and blame it on the crisis. This time it's Jess Gonzalez, a high-profile Blizzard employee who criticized the company's management, is leaving the company. Yeah. So as long as there's just like one person that says it's for these reasons, you can constantly push this same article over and over again.
You refuse
And
to listen.
at a certain level, I don't know if it's actually that video game news relevant for one even high level, or which is not what they're saying. They're saying high profile, which means something different. It just means they're somewhat outspoken and recognizable, and or recognizable. And we have definitely seen a case where GameDeveloper.com has tried to push the same narrative over and over again around against Ubisoft, against Activision Blizzard, against whoever they deem they want to cancel. I would say GameDeveloper.com is definitely a heavy cancel culture, pro-cancel culture news source. That honestly, I wouldn't even use them as a news source if it weren't for the fact that they get a few bits of different types of news, more insider business bits of news. And maybe they get those insider business bits of news by being a flaming SJW website. Let's see. They have a webinar here, how Ubisoft builds more intuitive tools, a free talk in QA with David Lightbrown. See, and this is funny because GameDeveloper.com has specifically gone after Ubisoft for a very long time. So why would Ubisoft now put out this webinar? Unless this has nothing to do actually with GameDeveloper.com. Let's see if there's any disclosures. Maybe there isn't. Maybe this is just them reporting on a story. I've never heard of Game Developer Editorial Forum. And clicking on their page did nothing. So I guess that's probably considered an ad in my ad blocker.
Smiles are the best medicine.
The time for perennial prayer has come.
Could have played more with that. Well, that took forever to load, but this does seem like it is GameDeveloper.com. And see, this does highlight the cronyism that seems to happen. And I can't really blame Ubisoft for potentially giving an exclusive, aka a bribe, to GameDeveloper.com to get them to stop writing bad articles about them, which they did for nearly a year straight plus last year. But I certainly can blame GameDeveloper.com for not having journalistic integrity and not getting into bed with employees of the company that you have been so hypercritical of. That's access journalism at its finest, and that's what happens way too often in video game journalism and in journalism in general. Moving on, Valve's extensive Steam Deck FAQ should answer your pressing dev questions. Let's see. Let's click on it and just look at it instead of just talking about the article. Developer comment. They don't recommend using a VM unless it's just for UI testing. It won't be able to test GPU performance on a virtual machine. Could you use a retail Steam Deck as a dev kit? Yes. They're focusing on AMD CPUs. If the game is Steam Deck verified, will it have more visibility on Steam? Yes. It'll be more visible on Steam Deck. The default Steam page for the Steam Deck shows only Deck verified titles. That said, the entire Steam store with all titles, regardless of Deck VOD, is still available to browse and purchase. I guess the answer probably there is no, actually, if you're talking about outside of the Steam Deck. It would be particularly unfair if Steam Deck verified games started getting a higher ranking. Okay. 8 threads. Multi-threading. It may not be that useful on Linux as you might think, but maybe it would. No plans to add 5G or LTE. It'd be kind of crazy to go with LTE even at this point. But you probably would need LTE and 5G. And that would be hard to keep the frequencies covered. They're recommending all games have FPS limit. Seems like they're not trying for suspend and resume. It's gonna disconnect the Wi-Fi while suspended, so we recommend you back up your save files before suspending. Yeah, but there's nothing special about the suspend or resume features. I imagine a lot of games will not really support suspend and resume so much. It'll either just work or it won't, would be my guess. And you probably will have several instances of games crashing when they're suspended or tried to be resumed. Steam Deck will automatically run games in full screen by default. You can drop down to windowed mode for the screen on the Steam Deck. I think windowed mode would probably be a mistake. They do plan on releasing SteamOS as a standalone operating system. We'll see if that succeeds. Let's see. Having little bits of network troubles, but not really large bits of network troubles. I suspect I have been seeing some network trouble just because people are shopping and browsing the internet more. Let's see. Will Steam Deck support the new Vulkan dynamic rendering? Yes. Will AMD FSR be incorporated? It's already available in some applications that supported games that already include FSR.
Is fighting and despair all you know?
I don't even know what FSR is. The GPU profiler will be able to be run on Linux natively. Apparently it already is. Gyro. Did it have a gyroscope in this Steam Deck? I didn't even catch that. I thought maybe it should, but I'm not sure I really caught that. I'm still very interested in what the trackpads show up as, honestly, because you have these two trackpads. Is the left one a mouse? Is the right one a mouse? Are they both mouses outside of Steam? Are they considered just touch controllers? Is it one big touchpad or touchscreen split into two configurations? Let's see. It'll take X input, raw input, direct input, as well as Steam input, which I guess Steam input. Will a touchscreen input be treated as a mouse input, or does it use the touch APIs? By default, the touchscreen treats events as a mouse click at that position. However, it also supports touch APIs versus via software SDL or Windows Touch. This is a configurable option that can be enabled in your Steam input configuration file. Interesting. So it has a touch screen and two touchpads. So it's like a lot of touch inputs. They're recommending you build profiles based on a PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 controller. Not the Xbox controller, which in all fairness, the PlayStation 5 controller probably with its touchpad is closer to a Steam Deck. Let's see. It's a lot here. I don't think I want to read all this. Can you put in an external controller? Currently the answer is no. So you can't just plug in like a wired Xbox controller or a PlayStation controller. I feel like that is a problem. Seems like an oversight.
I shall clear us a path.
They're not looking to particularly make better touch menus for the Steam website. Steam website inherently is still going to be a HTML website, and until you start to make some very reactive HTML5 website and just rebuild all of Steam, you're probably not going to see direct better interaction there.
They've broken through our ranks.
See, the kernel version's a good question. Right now they're using version 5.1.3. That I think is a pretty good version of Linux kernels. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there's people still using version 2 of the Linux kernels. Particularly since SteamOS is not trying to support a lot of old software and make their own new software, it would make a lot of sense that they could push forward and start with a very high level of kernel software instead of being stuck behind the support issue of older programs that worked before. By default, the OS updates will be distributed as whole OS images, but any user can enter a developer mode, which will let them modify the system and install patches like in normal distribution. Well, that sounds like it's going to be incredibly large downloads for every time there's an update. That seems kind of ridiculous. Read-only immutable OS, as in unchangeable. Seems kind of crazy, but that is closer to what a console would be instead of Windows Update style, just always updating. But clearly there needs to be a patch system in between those two options instead of just an entire base build. Although in fairness, it might be that the operating system is just so streamlined that downloading the entire operating system each time might be less than 20 gigabytes. I'd kind of forgotten this character even existed. So few people play it. Will the fact that the system is Wayland-based cause any known performance hit to existing games or any missing functionality to be aware of? Their response is there aren't any functional differences or performance problems as far as they know. Is Steam working closely with game developer engines such as Epic Games and Unity? They say yes. We'll have to see how much Epic Games really supports that or not. Unity almost certainly would want to support it. There's only 1 gigabyte of GPU memory, it seems like. Yeah, well, I don't know where they got the 1 gigabyte. It says up to 8 gigabytes can be shared right now. And it can be changed to even higher amounts. I guess this is shared RAM potentially between VRAM or GPU and CPU RAM. Although VRAM would be incredibly slow as far as virtual RAM, and GPU RAM tends to be faster than CPU RAM, but maybe it's all just going to be GPU memory speeds. Report issues to the Proton GitHub. Will there be any exclusive titles? No. They're gonna try and submit, accept or reject games that are submitted for verification in less than about a week.
The uncharted desert awaits. What do we have here?
Let's see. Also talking to Godot, it's kind of funny that they would put Godot at the bottom here and not just include them in their question answer. In particular, this is a great example of something labeled as an FAQ when nobody has probably asked these questions, or these really aren't the most frequently asked questions. It's just the ones that they have scripted in response to. And it definitely feels ridiculous when it's a question answer response.
Best of luck to you.
They support multi-channel through HDMI and Bluetooth. Okay. Yeah. This is a fairly technical response, but wow, I actually let them put these two together. If these two were on the field, they would become flaming glass. But you don't want to have happen. As much as it might be fun to leave them.
Die, creep. My king.
Well, it may not matter anyways. Nope, it will.
I'd do anything for glass.
See, at this point, they might as well just concede. Yeah, the other questions I definitely would have, certainly around the Steam Deck, would be super technical questions. I still would like to really know at what level and how those touchpads are handled by Linux. I would like to know, like, just a listing of all the software that would be on it, on its operating system anyways. I'd like to see where the extras are. Some basic things. Is there going to be a calculator app, or are you going to have to buy some kind of ridiculous Steam verified calculator? Are we going to start to see a whole bunch of garbage like that on Steam, where it's like, here's your calendar, here's your wake up alarm clock, here's your clock in general, here's your note taking app. There's a lot of basic things there. How well is voice input going to be handled, if voice input is handled at all? It would make a lot of sense for the Steam Deck to be able to take voice input instead of typing on a screen, since you don't have a keyboard. Like, all of a sudden Valve might have to compete with something like Alexa or Google Home software as far as voice input. Is there going to be support or integration for OBS, Discord,
I have lost.
or just generally chatting and face chatting people, FaceTiming people, or an equivalent of that?
General, we destroyed them.
I finally got one. Finally got one of 4 victories needed. Like, when you're paying such a large amount for a PC, it's got to be able to do at least a few PC things, which definitely at a certain point needs to be able to be plugged into a monitor on the HDMI out and a USB keyboard and mouse plugged on the inside, and then just be able to type and run some generic office software. I'm not expecting it to do anything like Photoshop or anything like that, but I think you need to be able to do everything you could think you might need to do, even if you actually never would do any word processing. Is there a good app out there that would read comic books or PDFs, or EPUB books, ebooks in general? Like, can you get the Steam Deck to also be a tablet, basically, for those reasons? Is there a force feedback in the thing? I'm not sure. There is. I've heard some things and then forgotten a lot of things about the Steam Deck. So that's a consideration also. Moving on, Mainframe Industry nets $23 million to create a cloud-native MMO. I've never heard of Mainframe Industry before. Farming Simulator 22 has sold over 1.5 million copies in 1 week, which I mean, either there is a huge amount of money laundering through selling Farming Simulator, or there's just that Central European group of people that seem to love Farming Simulator for a reason I just don't think I'll ever understand.
Let's speed things up. Too slow.
Got to roam in style.
Yes, maybe if you kept all these guys and then you kept a couple of power-ups, maybe that would work. I don't know. Let's see. Unity has acquired the collaborative toolmaker SyncSketch, which that's an interesting idea.
Be gone.
A collaborative sketching software. Unity has been acquiring quite a few companies, which arguably means they either have too much money or they've run out of ideas. GameDeveloper.com says Steam's Next Fest continues to boost whitelisting and sales, says Valve. Which, okay. These are just more sales that Steam does, and yeah, it's gonna be hard to ever be in a situation where sales aren't going to increase sales, or at least you're going to be able to make it look like a sale increased sales. It would be fairly pathetic for anybody to have a sale and then it decreases your average number of sales. Let's see, they have a deep dive here, the frothy design and diplomacy of humankind. You can see how GameDeveloper.com is definitely trying to write stories when they really have nothing to say. Niantic has hired the dev team behind the gameplay sharing platform Loki, another company I haven't recognized. But Niantic, makers of Pokemon Go, I imagine, have the money and maybe have some good ideas. Let's see, 1, 2, and I guess 3.
Die, cretin.
And loyalty is ironclad. March on! Harder armor! Steel yourself!
We've been going 3.5 hours, but my back hasn't spasmed as much as it has been in the past couple of weeks. Although, in this new chair, there is definitely a feeling that if I twist one way or the other, that it is going to spasm. So let's try and finish all these games. Here we have a game called Overdrive, which looks like nothing. 232 English and French. Here we have a game called Ghoul Castle 3D Gold Edition. Yep, that doesn't really look like anything special. $2.99 English, French, and several other languages. Here we have something called Global City, which looks like a cell phone port of a city sim. Free to play with in-app purchases, several languages. Here we have a game called Raptor Territory. Let's look at the screenshots here. Nah, I don't think there's enough polish here to interest me. Early access, 1079, several languages. And at a certain level, I guess, you need a good sales pitch, and just having people raptors run around is not enough of a sales pitch.
The dawn shines like a beacon of hope.
One step closer to victory.
Dawn always
We
prevails.
won't give
Dawn
him
is
an
a
inch.
dawn is upon us. Resolution in my right hand, might in my left. Two blades in one go.
This is my last job.
Should have attacked with the other one, I guess. I think I looked at this game World's End Club and was actually very surprised that I hadn't heard anything about it.
I bestow upon
Seemingly
you my
now,
lightning.
with 17 reviews, there's a reason why nobody's heard about it. And they didn't put any advertisement into it.
It won't be long now.
Let's see if any of these reviews are in English. $20.99. Let's see. Seemed to be a problem that then they fixed in the latest patch. Let's see. Weird side-to-side screen, character random event jittering. Seems to just be a technical issue as far as why people are disliking it. And none of them, not a lot of reviews in English, so yeah, I think I'd have to wait longer for more reviews. This might just be a case of a game that is just actively not as polished as it needs to be on launch day. Here we have a game called Space Station 51, which just looks like it's a asset flip first-person shooter.
Enemy or no.
$7.49, English and Chinese. Here we have one that's all in Asian characters and looks like it's probably a Chinese, either visual novel or like strategy game of some sort. I don't even know. Yeah, Chinese only, $4.99. Here we have Escape COVID Camp, which definitely seems like it's a troll joke low effort game. $2.99, English only. Here we have a game called Madness Beverage, which is an interesting title, to say the least. The actual game doesn't really look that interesting, but I may give it a chance and leave it on the fall list just because of the title alone. $12.74, English only. Here we have a game called Wednesday Basketball, which looks like a basketball game of some sort. Turn-based tactics basketball. At a certain level, yeah, positional placement and turn-based tactics on basketball makes as much sense as it does to potentially have a fantasy RPG game with turn-based strategy. $8.99, English and French. We'll leave that on the fall list. Here we have Conflict in Vietnam, which looks like an incredibly old game or a garbage game. Take your pick. It's being published by Atari, so it probably is just a really old game. $6.99 is way too expensive, English only. Nobody's really happy about Vietnam either, so you really shouldn't have made a video game even in the past about it. And I assume this art is maybe brand new because they needed a thumbnail. Here we have Decision in the Desert, which also definitely looks like an incredibly old game. It is worth showing, though, that yes, there was a time when people who had PCs and were playing PC games tended to be older and more military-centric and military-focused. and may even consider it patriotic to play a game like this, or to do that kind of war games. Crusade in Europe, same thing. Seems like they just snuck all of this out. Here we have a game called Broken Betrayal that definitely looks like it's a survival game, and I don't really see anything here that looks particularly interesting on top of that. His back, his like entire spine is sunken in. That's not a human back, really. Like if you're incredibly skinny, your spine should be pointing out, and if you're incredibly fat, your entire back would be squished out. Sunken in doesn't make sense. $10.99 English only. That's obviously a no. Here we have Casino Tycoon Simulator. I feel like we've seen 2 or 3 of these games and now released in a row. Early access, several languages. I feel like one of these might actually be good at some point. And as long as it doesn't have in-app purchases, I might give it a chance. Is this the one I want to give a chance to? With the strippers. Yeah, I wonder if that is really what this game is it's just a bunch of models of strippers. No, the visuals here are not good enough for a follow. We have Liftoff Micro Drones. It's been a while since we've seen a drone racing game. And like almost all drone racing games, they look nice enough that it probably does deserve a follow. Early access, English only, online PvP, and single player. Here we have a game called Fight Night, which looks like nothing other than a dungeon crawler. Let's go ahead and go home. Here we have a game called The Wanderer, which looks like it might be something. It's free, so I'll leave it on the fall list and see if there's a reason to potentially cover it. Trying to get through some of these. Here we have Haunted House Escape, a VR experience, which, yeah, there might be something to this. It looks a lot like the Haunted House game. What was that called? The 13th Guest? 7th Guest? Yeah. It's free. It's in VR only though. And so at a certain level, it would make a lot of sense if the 7th Guest had remastered itself for VR as a simplistic game. Here we have a game called The Infecting 3, which looks like it's just a low effort side-scrolling shooting tower defense zombie game. $9.99 English, allegedly full audio. We have Overshoot Battle Race. Looks like nothing. Early access, $13.49 is way too expensive. Several languages. Here we have a game called Bolt Action, which looks like garbage. This feels almost like this is a really old game. Like mid-90s game. Even if it is, it still looks terrible, and it doesn't have any relevancy. 73 cents discounted, English only. Let's see, here we have a game called Mud and Blood, which looks like nothing. Early access, $12.99 English only. Looks like it's a top-down twin stick shooter, but they're calling it an action real-time strategy with real-time tactics. It kind of looks like a tower defense game too. Here, The Dawn Sniper's Way. It's more visually polished, but you can kind of asset flip a game to look fairly visual polished. I'm not actually seeing any enemies in this game, and that's always a problem. Seems like you just have really long, really large UI interfaces for these guns, and then nothing to shoot at in any of the screenshots. $49.99, English only. It's tagged as an idler game. Yeah, I think this is a joke. So I'm going to say no. Here we have a game called Chess Crown, which we had a game like this a couple of years back, and then it never really got polished enough to look like a good battle chess attempt. It's kind of shocking that you don't get at least one good battle chess game every year. But no, this looks kind of bad. And they've gotten rid of a lot of animations by just having these two characters on the side do generic attack animations. $39.99. The thing that really sold battle chess is that there was at least one, maybe even two or three animations that happened based on which character attacks and kills another character. And so even if you really didn't care about playing chess, you would still be interested in seeing all the animations, and so it was like a gotta catch them all. So you could probably just redo the exact same animations, remaster them, and have a Pokemon Pokedex style collection mechanic happening around battle chess, and then re-release it that way. And you could probably put in, wow, my other eye is now feeling tired. Man, I wonder if my eyes are just tired. New cards, add-ons. Yeah. You could sell DLC of new battle chess sets with new animations easily and just keep people buying a set every year or so. Here we have a game called Finder in the Dungeon, or In Dungeon 3D Quest, which is kind of nicely animated, but then you have this keyboard layout always on screen from the looks of it. It seems like it has no controller support at all. $5.99. Yeah, it doesn't have any controller support. So it's fairly low effort because of that. We have VR Stage Dancer, which is probably a low effort anime girl dancing. From the looks of it, doesn't even look that good. $1.79 is way too cheap for a VR game also. It claims to support 13 languages. Here we have Minesweeper in G, which doesn't look particularly interesting. $3.74. English allegedly full on you. The idea of a Lara Croft-like character while playing Minesweeper does not really speed up the process of playing Minesweeper, so that's not a smart move. We have Archons of Doom, which doesn't look like anything that would interest me. If you told me this was an early 90s game, I might believe you. It does kind of feel like it's trying to make something something similar to a Dungeon Keeper game, but I'm not sure that it isn't more of a something else. You know what? I'm going to give this a follow list just because I really love Dungeon Keeper, and if this is like the closest game to Dungeon Keeper, I want to consider it. I don't know why I want to consider it. I'm almost certainly going to say no to it. Here we have a game called Simkia, which is tagged as an MMORPG and looks like just a collection of icons. It's free to play, but it's German only. And I really have no idea what it really is. Here we have a visual novel called Winter Dream. We definitely haven't seen a lot of puzzle games today, a lot of visual novel games, any anime games, any adult games. I wouldn't be surprised if what they're doing is catching up and specifically ignoring the adult games and the anime games until Friday, or maybe even next Friday. $2.39 English only. This doesn't look particularly interesting. Very polished. We have a game called Fruit Basket, which looks like a gravity jumper game. We've seen several of these over the past year. This one doesn't look particularly outstanding. We have Silent Night: A Christmas Delivery, which is tagged as a parkour flying game. Does it require VR? $4.99 English only. No VR support. Might be something to this. Flying Santa sleigh, and like I guess you're trying to get over the lights to drop presents on them. Basically bomb them with presents. Okay. So it's kind of like an Infinite Runner, but you're flying with a Santa theme to it. Doesn't seem awful. I'll put that on the fall list. Now, of course, the problem is, would I ever really have a good reason to play a Christmas game? Maybe, maybe not. Most Christmas games are bad, and having a Christmas-themed series probably would not work. Here we have Twin Mirror from Don't Nod, which is, I think, the makers of Life is Strange. And this was like an Epic Game, it's exclusive, and now it's on Steam for $14.99. I don't recall too many people saying anything about it too, so in a lot of ways, if this is from the Life is Strange people, I'll give it a follow just to see the reviews. Yeah. Twin Mirror might be the step in the right direction where they correct for writing fairly cringy, unrelatable teen drama in Life is Strange, Life is Strange 2. There's also Life is Strange True Colors, which they still are doing. And then Vampire. See, this Life is Strange 2 says it's free, but actually it's just the first episode that is free. The complete season is still selling for $31.96, and like Midnight Mass, I feel like the story from Life is Strange 2 is going to be ham-fisted and cringy. Same may be true for Twin Mirror. Here we have a game called Reflex, which looks like nothing. Early access $5.99, English only. Here we have a game called Rename. I don't know how you'd pronounce that. Looks like kind of an 8-bit platforming game, but it kind of, with its timer, with its art style, with its hack and slash, with the numbers flying all over, it seems like it's taken some cues from later games and ideas to make it feel like it's a modern game trying to evoke nostalgia versus a modern game that's just trying to be lazy. Let's see, it's coming soon, so I guess I'll put it on the fall list, although it doesn't even have an announced date. Here we have a game called They Came From Above, which looks like nothing. $14.99, English only. Here we have a game called The Wasteland Trucker, which looks like garbage. Early access $10.79. Here we have a game called Key Hero, which doesn't look particularly interesting. I imagine it's keyboard only controls. $1.59. Maybe it's not. Maybe you're just looking for a key. Yeah, you have SUL 3D, which looks like it's some kind of asset flip German low effort game. $7.99. English, Portuguese, Brazil, not German. I was wrong. Here we have Snow Tunes Island, which looks like garbage. I could have curated some of these games, definitely. Instead of potentially going 4 hours today. This is free, and even at free, I'm not going to put it on the follow list. Here we have Bean and Nothingness. Looks like it's some kind of puzzle game. Is it a box pushing game? Kind of feels like a box pushing game. You put a bean down, you shoot it, and then it rolls and breaks blocks. And different beans do different things. I'm going to give this a follow, but I think this actually be really complicated. More complicated than it's worth. $10.19, English only. We have about 10 more games. We have a game called Quest of Wizard, which looks nicely animated. That Sinistar game is like the only game that even released today that really interested me a lot, enough that I'm still thinking about it. Which, in all fairness, a lot of games get covered in these live streams, so I do forget about most of them before I even log off and stop streaming. This is $2.39, bunch of languages. I'm gonna give it a follow. It might be something. Could also be nothing. We have a game called War Tales. Some kind of open world medieval adventure game. I don't think there's enough visual polish here to interest me, particularly with the positional placement and the interface. Early access, $31.49. That's way too expensive. Bunch of languages. We have Sanctuary Saga Prelude, which means we can just dismiss it as a prelude. It's going to be coming soon as a demo free game. Probably would have dismissed it anyways. Here we have a game called Square Man, which looks like a joke game. Joke platformer. Early access, $6.99. Here we have a game called Exodus H, which looks like nothing. $21.27, English and French, that's too expensive. Here we have Forsaken Portals, which looks like a space game, and I have no interest in space games. Early access, $16.14, several few languages here, English, German, French, and Russian. We have a Mission in Snowdrift Land, which looks like just a low effort platformer. There's a little bit of visual polish on it, but I don't think enough. It feels like it's too much of a precision platformer for my liking. At this point, even playing like something like Super Mario Bros. 3 is beyond me. I don't think I'd really enjoy playing that all the way from beginning to end, and I'm not sure I ever actually did make it to the end all the way through, because those levels get really hard, and I had a lot more time back then than I do now. Here we have a game called Inner Light, which looks like it's a VR, like Buddhist meditation app, which I think at a certain point having a VR headset would only hurt with meditation, not help. $13.99, English only. There's a 150 plus card game solitaire pack, which doesn't sound terrible. It definitely does feel like it is just a cell phone port of a game. In fact, I think I have installed this game on Android before, something very similar. What's the price for this? $11.99. I think probably Tabletop Simulator would do you better. or a solitaire game that looks a lot better would do you better. So I have to say no to that. Here we have a game called Lab Bioterror. I heard about a game on Reddit that you play solitaire and you put money in and potentially win money out. That's kind of ridiculous for solitaire. $7.79, English only. And then that just brings me to my shopping cart, which we don't need to really cover yet again. But yeah, I definitely reduced the amount of things that were on the shopping cart down to a much smaller amount of just about $20. It definitely sucks being frugal, but that is the mature adult thing to do, particularly nowadays, and right with the economy as it is. Alright, so now I'm going down my Twitter feeds to see if there's any new news to talk about, and then we'll be done for today. Apparently 6 state treasurers are pushing for change over at Activision Blizzard misconduct. Interesting. Politicians becoming involved tends to put a lot more pressure on companies. Although I don't know how politicians such as state treasurers, how much influence they have versus how much they are just looking for press coverage or something to make themselves look good because they want to run for a higher office. Yeah, it doesn't seem like a ton of new news has happened. I'm also seeing Twitter having problems, seemingly. Loading things. YouTube is exploring new ways to help creators make better videos. Soon you'll be able to view data on your audience, search trends, as well as the popular searches across YouTube for the past 28 days. So it's going to be easier to know what people who are watching your videos are searching for and pander to that more. 7 billion humans won Google Play's Best of 2021 in the indie games category. I guess we'll have the announcement for all of those. Cyan's storefront sells books that look like the Mislinking books, or the Mislinking book and Sirius's and Akinar's Trap Notebook from the first game. Didn't know they sold that. That's an interesting thing to potentially get if you need a notebook. Questionable though, do people really need notebooks? Guess it depends on how much you write down physically. And there definitely was a point where it looked like there was going to be more digital tablets that could read handwriting a lot better, and they've really not improved upon that concept as much as they should. because you really should be able to just write on any piece of paper on top of a tablet, and it should just be able to pressure sensitivity wise read that writing and scan that into actual typed in text, and not just scan it into potentially a picture. And there are some devices that do that, but they are expensive and they are not frequently available. And it's not really reasonable to scan in all of your notebook later. And at a certain point, I guess that level of connection, The Witcher Season 2 as a red carpet premiere happening right now or a few hours ago. The idea of open book tests and everything just being open book kind of does make some sense in a modern world. Very rarely are you having to know things off the top of your head in working a real job. You have to know a lot off the top of your head, otherwise you look like a complete idiot and get fired fairly quickly. But it's not insane to think that plumbers and such have their standards and guide books, and they have those to refer back to. Yeah. There's, in these books, 96 line pages, and there's only like one picture of them for these mist books. So we're paying probably a fairly high premium for what is just a notebook. Video Games Chronicles says Grid Legends gameplay reveal and release date announcement is coming Friday. As far as news, here GameDeveloper.com says 6 state treasurers push for change over the Activision Blizzard misconduct. This is California, Massachusetts, Illinois, Delaware, and Nevada. I wonder though how much of this is really just them pushing for a settlement, because honestly I wouldn't be surprised if all the political governmental influence goes away the second that Activision Blizzard just agrees to settle with the state and pay money to the states. I wouldn't frankly be surprised if these states are all kind of low on cash and intentionally targeted a very recognizable and known to be pretty bad company and are bringing these lawsuits specifically because their state budgets are low. And this might be a great way of, if not making up the difference, of at least shifting the blame. Well, apparently that's not going to load. Well, whatever. Yeah, we have had some network trouble, certainly, but not really a lot. Oh, I just recognized that OBS, when it reconnects, resets the amount of dropped frames. Ooh, well, that's useless. That is totally useless to reset that counter. Well, whatever. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.